What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Dukes of Blather. I'm Sam. That's Wick. Every week we get together. I was going to say every week we get together. Every week we get together, discuss things from the views of Generation Xers, trying to figure out and cope with what's going on in the world. And boy, have we had a strange week already. We're going to be talking about that. But don't forget, Dukes of Blather is sponsored and brought to you by the fine folks of Iniquitous Clinic in Woodstock, Georgia. They offer hope to patients with major depressive disorders, postpartum depression, bipolar depression, OCD, PTSD, and severe anxiety. Severe depression takes a huge toll on your everyday life, and ketamine therapy offers a chance to find hope again. Many patients have tried numerous oral medications but have found little to no relief, as well as difficult to tolerate side effects. Ketamine treatment is highly effective and safe. It's time to get off the harmful medications and start living again. If you're in pain, get help from the Iniquitous Clinic in Woodstock, Georgia. Get more information on this treatment and if it's right for you at 770-850-1042. Wick, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm going to get some ketamine.
Yeah, it feels like that's about the right thing to do right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I have all of the aforementioned disorders now, all attacking at once.
Yeah, it does feel like I think everyone kind of has this feeling that the walls are closing in tighter, and it's time for the straitjackets because it's been kind of a rough week. You know, we try to talk about fun things and serious things. This week is a serious one, unfortunately. But we're going to try to scrape all this into one big pile and try to sort it out. Of course, we're talking about the Capitol riots. If we look back over the whole entire year and we look over everything that's been going on, we've dealt with COVID, we've dealt with Black Lives Matters protesting, we've dealt with an election, we have dealt with a president that says that, hey, you've been ripped off in your election and your vote doesn't count because people have stolen it from you. Now we're talking about impeachment again. But if we pull the scope back quick, can we say that this maybe has started back at the point of maybe COVID, at the point where this election gets closer? Is that when we're really talking about the build up to this point, or do you
go back much farther than that?
Since the presidency, since 2016.
Since the presidency, I think maybe since the 90s.
Okay, since the 90s. Really starting to come to a head now.
Right.
Things are really getting heated up. We can explore that. We may go there. But if we get our microscope a little bit closer to diagnose this whole situation, it seems like the election of 2020, and as it comes to a rapid inferno, dumpster fire, it seems like it kind of starts when we know an election is going to be in November. Do you think that's fair?
What, the tension and the
I mean, the tension's always been there, but for the most part, everyone's still waiting. I mean, you still got another 2 years to go. In 2018, it's not quite the time yet. 2019, we still got another 2 years, but that last year begins to tick off.
Yeah,
and the campaigns begin to run and send their messages. Debates begin to happen. The DNC has to choose their nominee.
Yeah.
It seems like to me, with COVID and intertwined in this whole situation, because it did affect the election as far as people being able to get together and debate and whatnot. It seems like it really kind of gets really hot this last year in 2020.
Oh, I mean, that's an understatement, I think. I think one of the most consequential years in the history of the Republic, without question.
And we know that we're going to we how much does COVID affect Trump's reelection? We don't know. You did not feel good and confident, just pulling the microscope back a little bit. You did not feel great and confident that this was going to be Trump's reelection. I will give you that. I did. I thought it would be. COVID really put things to a grind for him.
Yeah.
Really pull it. I think of all things, and I'm somebody who was really on the fence with Trump. That truthfully, I think this last year really opened my eyes to the problems that maybe Trump kind of presented for himself. Um, the COVID issue presented problems. I think he had problems with his debate ability. I thought he would do better in debates. He was pretty bad. You know, he did a lot of I'm done. I'm taking my ball. I'm going home with interviews and various speeches and the challenges that he often faced. And we're kind of building up because I think at this point, if I can, Wick, say this, some of this buildup is the liberals are feeling like they are very confident. They are feeling like they're being very justified this last year. And maybe a lot of Republicans are seeing it but not admitting it. Is that fair?
I think that's as accurate can be. It's very hard for the ego to let go of something, especially something you're so invested in and have been so invested in for now going on 5 years, that it's very hard to say perhaps, that was an illogical move.
Yeah, and I think that that has a lot to do with it for me, who was somebody who was really on the fence about him, and I saw a lot of good qualities. And we're going to talk about some of what character traits Trump has that kind of maybe weren't his fault that built into this whole time bomb going off. But I was really on the fence about him. And as this election goes further, and as we're having the debates and whatnot, I'm beginning to get more turned off. One of the biggest things for me as this thing starts to build into what we're going into was the fact that I just felt like you were the president for 3.5 years. When you're and let's face it, the media does not like him. I think
No.
let's be fair, the media hates him. I think they have used a narrative against him, fairly or unfairly. I think they have. And if you know that that's the deal, if you know that's what's coming down the pipe at you, if you know they're not going to be fair, if you know they're not going to ask you fair questions, then why are you not prepared for unfair questions? Why are you not prepared to face this thing and stare it down and say, it doesn't matter what they throw at me, I'm ready? Instead, it was almost like, but you're asking me hard questions, but you don't ask anybody else hard questions. That for me, admittedly, made me question his leadership ability. And I want to say that there's going to be Republicans that are going to listen to this and they're going to deny it. Listen, I'm a libertarian, but I like to call myself a 21st century libertarian. I'm kind of a moderate right. I would say, Wick, you're a little bit of a moderate left. We don't have agendas. We're not. I don't work for the RNC. He doesn't work for the DNC. We got nothing here. Nobody's a member of anything. We're just being honest. And I got to be honest with you. It really kind of made me change how I viewed him. And I think a lot of other conservatives felt really challenged this year on things that they thought he should deliver better on. And I think that the liberals, in the nicest way I can say it, kind of smirked over that. Took a lot of pride in being right in some areas of that. And I think it kind of maybe begin to twist things to be a little bit tougher on individuals being able to have political discussions. And then it gets much, much worse, as we'll see. But first thing I want to challenge you with, Wick, as we talk about the Capitol riots, and trust me, Black Lives Matters and all that stuff's not going to escape our scope here. But there's something about this protest that happens at the Capitol that I feel a little bit positive in. Okay. Of all the stuff that's not to feel positive about, there's one thing I felt very positive about in this situation, which is these protesters honestly believed that the election was rigged. This was not something that they kind of thought or it could be possible. They had a lot of faith in their leader. You can say what you want about Trump, whatever. He was their leader. They believed in his presidency. They believed in his term. They believed in the things that he did and he was saying he was going to do. No matter how you feel that you are, if you're in that group or not in that group, that's fine. But I think that we can't dismiss the fact that these protesters honestly thought that this election was rigged. And understanding that position, I think there's some good in this. And the fact that if the American people, and I want to say this about Black Lives Matter too, okay? When we're seeing that if the American people feel their democracy is in danger, they actually will act. I think there's some positivity to that. Now, I don't think that the whole situation in a nutshell is positive. We should wrap it up. That's done. We have a lot to break down. There's a lot that went really bad here. But Wick, when I look at Black Lives Matter and you know what they stand for and the freedoms and rights and of minorities, I think they also saw something wrong in the system they believed to be true and decided to fight for their rights and decided to do things by any means necessary as well. Can we look at each other and say that there is some part of that that is a little bit refreshing, that people are still very active in something that they see wrong, that when they see wrong, regardless of whether it's true or not, I want to put that out there. But let's say that the election was rigged and there was an ample amount of proof. It's nice to know that the American people aren't just done and numbed out and not involved in whatever happens. These people really believe that the election.
Well, I would say, if you have that much conviction, there's 4 branches of the armed forces that you can express that in, and they're more than willing to meet with you.
I don't
give you some options.
But I don't understand that. And I don't want to cut you off there, but I don't feel like I should have to join the American forces to stand up for something I think is wrong in the government, whether I'm Black Lives Matter or whether I'm Trump. I mean, can we agree on that at least?
Well, I think if you want to take it to the degree of violence, and you believe in the Republic, you believe in the Constitution that greatly, on either side, there's 4 branches of government you can express. And if you want to express aggressively, there's arenas to do that in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The streets of America, and especially the capital of the United States is off limits, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's more than fair. Black Lives Matter. Do you think that the media treated these two things fairly? Do you feel like they're both very different, or do you think that they're relatively somewhat the same?
They're somewhat the same, and they're very different at the same time, I think.
Okay, that's fair.
Black Lives Matter was more impulsive. We're learning now, and I even saw it on Twitter on the 5th. There was, I don't even remember whose feed I was on, but somebody said something, and then they said, "Oh, well, I have a brief moment of relevancy, and I have your attention." And then he posted a meme, and it said, I'm super paraphrasing, but basically, something's coming. You've been warned. I think we're learning now that this was far more. And I have a bad habit of taking people at their word. And when you say you're an insurrectionist, I'm going to believe you're an insurrectionist.
I often have thought
as
that
as badly planned as it was, and as much of a clusterfuck as it really was. Um, they were there to do some very dirty, dirty business.
I've often kind of when I kind of think about the Trump, I would call it the Trump extreme right. I don't think everybody. It's just like Black.
This is not. I don't think these rioters were anywhere near the average Trump supporter.
Right. I don't think that they represent every conservative as much as
No, absolutely not.
I don't I don't believe Black Lives Matter and the way they handle things is
no,
representative of all Black people or people
no.
who are fighting for minority rights. Um, but what we do know is that it's pretty obvious now that Trump lied.
About the fraud?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I mean, there were 60 court cases thrown out, 2 from the Supreme Court. I think eight cases were thrown out by judges he appointed.
yeah.
You know.
At any point, let me ask you this: at any point,
Plus, if it was a conspiracy, they left McConnell and Graham in office. So women.
at any point in this election, you're going to say no, but I want you to be honest. When you saw the numbers, was there any part of you at any moment that felt like something may not be right here?
After the election?
During, after?
With the actual vote count?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I'll tell you why is because in most states, I think you saw an down ticket. The Republicans perform phenomenally.
Yes.
And I think that is a very indicative, from my point of view, of Republicans voting against their nominee, against their president.
Yeah. I listen, the big thing for me, and I challenged my family on this because this was a rough debate at Thanksgiving. Yeah, listen, it's not a purple wave. I mean, you're not lying on, you're not cheating the system. You're not committing voter fraud and stealing an election when your local elections are very much a purple wave. I mean, this thing came down to what Georgia would do. I think if these ballots were really rigged and the election was rigged, you would see very little red winning. We did see red win in a lot of places. I'm not of the opinion that people vote straight ticket. Now, I've been sold that over and over again by people arguing about that purple wave.
I think in the Georgia, the original Senate race, I think you saw that with Biden taking Georgia and then Loeffler and Perdue taking both Senate seats, and in the runoff as well, you saw.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Trump voters, a lot of Republicans, especially the far right Trump base, stayed home in the runoff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're starting to find out that there's a little proof. Even the GOP's come out. My question to you on this is,
well, even Barr and McConnell now have said there's no proof.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Lindsey Graham stands up there and says, "Look, I was on the side of the president. I was looking for reasons to believe that this fraud had happened. I asked for evidence, and I have 2 cases of voter fraud on my desk after waiting for a month." And he said it's just not near enough. I mean, we're not even close to what I was expecting us to get. So he even kind of did a U-turn on that. Now, my question for you is: do you believe? And this is a strong question. So, I'd like for you to think through this, but do you think the Republicans, the GOP really believed him, or was it just a way to make liberals angry? Like, do you think that they knew that this was probably hogwash, but it was just infuriate? It was like one last big poke on the Democrats across the table. Or do you think they believed it?
I think they believed it.
I do too. I think they wanted,
and I wish that weren't true. I wish people, regardless of what the issue is, whether it's political or otherwise, didn't have an impulse to believe things just on hearsay. That's disturbing to me that is
Well,
such a component of human nature, and I think that has nothing to do with politics.
that's all true, but I don't fault for the GOP believing their leader, their president, for saying, "Hey, it's voter fraud," and I've got all the evidence here. And I don't blame for representatives to say, "Well, okay, then we got to work this out. Let's find out what's going on." I
But
think the
they
Democrats,
elected a guy that was always slim on details.
but hold on now, though. I mean, Democrats elect a president. Let's say that he, or she doesn't win a reelection, and they think there's voter fraud. Do you think there's going to be a portion of Democrats who are going to be like, no way, no way, this was a fair election. We lost fair and square. I don't buy that. I think that they are. I think all of those representatives are trained to follow the lead
Well,
horse,
I would point to 2000
which was when Trump.
Gore versus
Oh,
Bush.
I'm sorry. I was thinking 2016.
Yeah, Gore.
Yeah, yeah.
But that was Gore's decision. That was not. That was his decision alone.
But at no point though is there a discussion about serious fraud in that election.
No, but what is how they are akin to each other is the fact that there was a reason to go on, and there was a reason to keep counting, and they could have really. Gore was the one that threw down
I understand.
the final, and that's leadership.
I
And,
understand.
yeah.
I understand. But it's
Now, if he had, now you're asking if he had said there's clearly fraud here.
yeah. I don't see that the Democratic representatives going, you know what, you're full of it. I think they fall right in line. I think that's part of the problem that we have up there. Is I don't think that if this is a reverse role situation that the Democrat representatives, step away from their leadership and say, I don't know. I kind of feel like, I don't think so. I mean, I think we're giving them way too much credit. This is a very tit for tat group of people.
There is a different composition to liberals and conservatives, I think, and there's more doubt in liberals.
I don't know.
And I think that doubt would have kind of blunted that kind of movement. They'd be like, oh, well, we did lose, golly.
I don't know. I think you get the exact same response.
I mean, it kind of happened in 2016, but not to nearly to the degree it's happened.
I mean, 2016, all of a sudden Russia rigged the whole thing. I don't know that.
Well, but that was on the face of some evidence. We, of course, did later learn.
But we
lot of evidence.
We learned a lot that the evidence really wasn't what we thought it was. A lot of it was hearsay. A lot of that was hearsay.
Well, the Mueller report made that that was the first thing the Mueller report revealed, was that they had interfered.
Oh, they interfered.
But not to the point of putting him in office, but they did interfere.
They certainly did interfere, but I don't think that they interfered in the knowledge of the Trump campaign. I mean, that's not been proven. And I think in all fairness, that should be where it's left, because I think if there would have been, we would have known. Because my question would have been really if the GOP knew that this was a farce, as a group, if they know that this is all hogwash, is it just fun to just annoy the Democrats for as long as they can, and then this joke just went a little too far? But I'm with you. I think they did.
I don't think so. I don't think we would have seen what happened on the 6th.
Well, I still think the people believe it. I just wonder if the people in the inside circle, the representatives, were looking at Trump going, no way, but we'll play the game. Probably some.
You're talking about, yeah, I think they were. Look, I don't like Graham, I don't like McConnell, but they're bright men.
Yeah.
And I think I think they knew they're playing politics.
Yeah. Does this,
and in fact, I think Graham and McConnell, while I applaud their eventual 180s, they should have done this a long time ago.
Yeah. And my question also to you is this anywhere near the same as a Watergate type of scandal? A misrepresentation of voting, or I know that it's not the same, but is the scandal familiar? Is the scandal similar for Trump here?
It's worse, far worse.
Because he publicly tells people this is a farce.
Mm-hmm.
Is his legacy ruined now, 10 years from now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to sit back and go, you know what? I'm kind of glad that he didn't win this.
This defines him.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that he didn't win. If he's willing to do that,
This defines him for all coming time.
Now,
and which is very unusual to me, given he had the opportunity in the last since the election with the spike of COVID. He had a wonderful opportunity to secure his legacy. And, but, the Greeks taught us character is destiny. And I think that's bearing itself out to be true.
I think it is. And, you can say what you want about George W. Bush. We've had this discussion in the past of how he's viewed now. But listen, he stands on top of that heap in 9/11 and he gets on the megaphone. He's a leader of all men and women and children of the American of America right there. And he makes a great stand at that moment. And I don't care who you were or what you believed in or who you voted for. You felt
I had his back until Iraq.
Until of a pride in that moment. And Trump could have definitely done that here. And I feel like I think Trump was so unbridled. I think he was he was such a wild stallion. And he's just kicking every wall. And they're doing their best to throw a rope around his neck. And it's just really tough for them to get a hold of this guy. And the last year just feels like he has just been this wild stallion that you just cannot tame. And I think it just ended up biting everyone in the ass here. That's connected to him. Everybody now is going to try to get away from him, because they know the ship is sinking. I think there's a lot that's coming out now about God,
and more is going to come.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get away from him at this point. We've lost. I think he's self-destructive at this point.
I think just by what I do as being a writer, human nature is a big component. My observations of it, and he's had self-destruction written all over him for a very long time.
When we look at this Capitol, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much of this is just the election fraud conspiracy? And how much of it is coronavirus, social media, the bad job market?
It's a bit of all of it. I don't know if I can break it down in percentages, but it's desperation. It's, I think it's indicative of a mental health crisis. I think it's indicative of an addiction crisis.
Well, people often ask me what 2020 was to me, and I say it's a year of frustration. Mm-hmm. Everything that I look at was frustration. The coronavirus was frustration. The coronavirus and people debating over it, and even in grocery stores, is frustration. Frustration with the unemployment, frustration with the job market, frustration with healthcare, frustration through social media, frustration through the coronavirus, and then frustration with an already untrusting government and untrusting hierarchy of leadership, even with Black Lives Matter, because a lot of that was, listen, these cops are have killed Black people and nobody does anything about it. The people above them hide it and they sweep it under the rug, and we're tired of it. So I think 2020 was, to me, a year of extreme frustration for everybody who lives here. I don't care what side of the road you want to stand on. 2020 is a year of a lot of frustration, right?
2020 is the most consequential year since 1968, and it may be even greater than that. I think And we're only seeing we're not looking at the entire chessboard, as they say. We're in the moment, and we can't envision perhaps the geopolitical shifts globally that could occur as a result of handling of the coronavirus. It really, really frightens me, America's status going into the future. I mean, what is the world seeing right now? In Europe, this is not. It's not called. This is not a protest. It's not a riot. It's called a coup.
Yeah.
And that has never been something that has never occurred in the United States.
Well, for our first coup, it was extinguished within 40.
It was, and yeah, it was
24
the
hours.
world's most poorly designed.
Yeah, I mean, let's give it. I think it is a very dramatic situation. Certainly, sometimes I think it's a little overblown for the fact that it was pretty much extinguished within a 4-hour period. Not
Yeah.
quite the coup that you're expecting to have in America. But I do think with Trump's leadership here as a failure. Now, I won't go and say for the last 3 years it's been a failure. I try to be subjective and cautious about generalizing his entire term. I don't I won't do that. I refuse to do that. I think every person deserves a breakdown of how they've handled their lives and their position and their work and whatnot. Definitely this last year has been really bad. But with his leadership as a failure, and I think a lot of frustration being built with America. Do you think that some of this is because there was a lot of desperation in certain Republicans to have a leader, regardless of how bad he might end up being? Like, is this a situation where you're everything is so frustrating, especially with all the closings of businesses and people losing their jobs and people losing their livelihoods in many cases and still in threat of it? Is this a case where people were just so desperate that they needed to have a leader, that Trump was going to be it no matter what, sink or swim, bust or make it?
I think absolutely
They needed somebody, and despite of maybe his last year being so
there
bad,
is something more than politics going on.
Yeah,
with
the need of a hero.
The people, almost a savior.
Yeah,
and I've never seen it go this deep with any other candidate in my lifetime politically.
I don't know that. Well, like you said, the '60s, there was some frustration. I don't know that we've seen the height of frustration. I mean, we've never seen a pandemic like we have in recent years. Social media has never been as big as it has been the last couple of years. The job market got pretty bad. Like we said, we had people that were losing their businesses out of their own control, which is probably one of the scariest things any business owner and small business owner can go through is losing your business through you, none of your own creation. There are times that people go and they make profit and they blow it on hookers and
well, that's
and
the
coke.
thing.
And there are times that people mishandle money.
We have a false notion of security, I think, in this country. That
yes, we do. Yeah.
Okay, I'm here, I'm safe. You're never safe. And you just really have to wrap your arms around that philosophical truth.
I love that statement because there are people that I've talked to, especially with which I will say cancel culture, and with I'm not completely against political correctness, although I am against forced political correctness or introvertive tolerance. But I will say that I have always preached, and maybe this is my libertarian roots, but I've always preached that, listen, nothing, freedom comes with danger. Rights come with dangers.
Life comes with danger.
Life comes with dangers, but there are countries that you can't have a gun. And that eliminates that you can be walking down the wrong street at the wrong time and being shot. Now, guns still end up in those countries, and I understand that before you blow me up. I do get that. But what I'm saying is that, we can go to the point of trying to eliminate all the things that we fear. And in doing so, you will not have a tenth of the freedom that you have now. We run the risk of someone else's freedoms um, interfering with ours. And it could be even our right to live. If we have laws that say you can own a gun, and we have laws that say, hey, if in some states you don't even have to have a license to carry that gun, then if we have a country of gun ownership freedom, then you run the risk of someone using that freedom on a day where they're mentally incapable of making wise decisions and shooting up the Walmart you're in. Now, certainly they don't have the right to do that, but there's nothing that stops those rights that build to that point from them being able to. So inherently in America, I think that one thing that this show, I think, is a great moment to establish is, if you're going to have freedoms, you're not going to have safety. And you almost have to choose here of what you want. Do you want freedom or do you want safety? Because you cannot have both. You cannot be free and have no censorship, and you can't have all these things and not have the other. You inherently are going to have to give up.
Well, you're not going to be safe either way.
No, you're going to be safer.
You're going to perhaps. Right? I mean, there's still, we don't control nature.
Right. But there are efforts to make sure that the whole entire, we need to make sure America is safe for everybody. And I think that's a spineless take, in the way that, yes, we're a civilized country. We're in the year 2020. Yes, you inherently have some safeties in place for sure. But there's no guarantee that your life will be safe and that all these things will guarantee you to be in this peaceful place of utopia. If you have that, and let's say that in a perfect world we can create that, then most certainly you're losing freedoms to do that, because inevitably, to make other people feel safe, there are things that you can't do anymore to make them safe, to make them comfortable. And we have to be aware of that in this country. So I'm glad that you brought up that point. It's a very important point to make, that we give up, when we have freedoms, we give up safety.
You give up safety when you're born.
Yeah.
I don't think it's, I think it precedes politics. It's the nature of living, being a living creature on terra firma.
Nope. I mean, we are animals, and the animal kingdom is not a safe place. Yeah. There's always a food chain there.
Yeah.
There's always a poacher. Anyway, moving back to the topic here. I also have to wonder if this has been built up, and I don't want to let the liberals get away. I mean, we have Maxine Waters that's saying, let's make sure we show up whenever we have to show up. And if you see anybody in that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, or whatever she said, create a crowd and you push back on them. We saw videos of people in mega hats being attacked in public places. It was happening. This is a lot of tension and frustration that's beginning to build way before this point too, even before this last year. How much do the Democrats have to play in this buildup, do you think? I mean, I don't think it's where Trump is. It's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to pass the blame, but I'm trying to understand that there is something here that's heating up, and it's not just one side of this thing.
No, it certainly isn't. It takes two people to go, or two factions to go to war.
Yeah. And we saw a lot of tension from Schumer. We saw a lot of tension from Pelosi. AOC played her part. We have seen a lot of tension be brought. And I would like to say too that, a lot of these states that are suffering the worst from the pandemic are,
I think, though, the difference
largely Democratic cities.
Yeah, Democratic cities. But to your point about AOC and Maxine Waters, they're just representatives They're congressmen in the House of
I agree.
Representatives.
I am not saying that
Yeah.
it's the same, but I am saying that as Trump's in the White House in year 2, that people being attacked for mega hats and the immaturity of and the irresponsibility of Maxine Waters' statement.
Very irresponsible.
It does have to play its role into the build up here, because we're not talking very long from there that we're looking at riots from Black Lives Matter. And a lot of representatives, in fact, many on the left were patting this movement, and not that the movement was a problem, but the destruction of the movement. They were looking a little bit away from that. They were passing a blind eye to it. We're talking about defunding the police at that point. There's a lot that I think liberals are responsible for that they're not going to take. But I want to serve their slice. I think there's a portion of that maybe the right conservative feels like, although it ended up being a very hypocritical situation up to that point. My question would be, when we're watching Black Lives Matter and who I feel, listen, I am an advocate for Black Lives Matter. I am. But I saw Antifa people or Antifa members doing destruction, who I believe is an anti-capitalist faction. I do. I believe they're anti-capitalist. I think that's their goal. And are anarchist. And I saw many of Black Lives Matter members stop those people from doing further damage. So I want to make clear that I don't think the entire Black Lives Movement situation has a huge responsibility here. But I do wonder, when we see this happen and it goes on for months and no one wants to do a whole lot about it because it's a very sensitive situation, that it could have given these people at the Capitol more fuel to feel like if they can get away with it, we can get away with it. And I think there is a role to play there. And I wanted to get your opinion on that. Do you think that, and we call it the Black Lives Matter riots. I got to be honest with you. I feel like they're more Antifa riots. I really do.
I think it's anarchist riots. I don't.
Yeah,
I mean,
if
anarchists suddenly decided to adorn the cloak of Antifa, I think there was a lot of opportunism there.
I think I do. I think Antifa is made up of many anarchists and anti-capitalist.
Yeah.
And
I don't think there's a firm ideology or a platform or a leadeip.
What better for anarchy than to have no leadership? I mean, what is anarchy?
Yeah, like how do you how do you elect a leader?
The minute that you tell me you're an anarchist and you're a member of the anarchist party and here's your president, I go, you know what? That's bullshit. You're not a member of the anarchist party at all.
You're not an anarchist.
All right.
This is the order to our anarchy.
So when people tell me, "Oh, Antifa doesn't have an order," that's unfair. You can't call them anarchist and anti-capitalist because they don't have yeah, but that's their whole gig. I mean, that's what they do. There's a lesson to be learned here, folks. They're not going to have a leadership because that's what they're against. They're against a hierarchy. And so, do you see some play here with Antifa and their riots? Which they kidnapped, and I have said this many times. I believe they absolutely kidnapped Black Lives Matter, hijacked it. They took it at gunpoint. And I think Black Lives Matter was like, "Okay, cool, you're with us, sweet, yeah. Here's the keys," and they just took the car and never came back.
Kind of reminds me of the situation at Altamont when they brought in the Hell's Angels for security.
Right.
Yeah,
And then they just ended up brawling. Right.
Yeah, and then that poor guy got murdered.
I knew a guy. This is Antifa. I knew a guy that had gotten out of prison, and really sweet guy. And actually, believe it or not, real sweetheart. Had a arrest record a mile long. Sweetheart of guy though, and it was just one of those people that when he was on drugs, he just was not. He couldn't stay away from the drugs, and when he was on drugs, he changed into this monster. But if you could catch him on days that he wasn't on it and he was clean, he was a sweetheart of a person. He really was. And there are just people out there that they become a monster once the drug enters their system. And
well, that's what goes back to what I was saying about with mental health. I think a lot of this is being fueled by something much deeper than political ideologies.
Right. But what I was going to say is, I remember when he got out of prison one time, we knew this other guy who was young and he was impressionable. I'll change names for the story. But David gets out of prison, and Mike looks up to David because David's kind of cool. He's got tattoos. He's been in prison. He's kind of a badass. I've seen David fight. David was ridiculously good at fighting. And Mike really looked up to David. So much that David one day wanted to take Mike's car up to the store to get something to drink. And Mike let him. And we didn't see that car for a week because David took off, went and got drugs, and the car was found by the police abandoned. And I kind of feel like that was Antifa with Black Lives Matter. I think Black Lives Matter was like, hey, we can use all the help we can get. Hey, Antifa, you're cool. You know, we've heard of you before. Sure, you can get involved. Oh, okay. Yeah, you want to march? Sure, you can march. Oh, wait, why you're bashing that out? Why are you stealing cars? What's going on? Why are you catching that building on fire? I do think Black Lives Matter got hijacked by Antifa. They are the David of that story. And my question is, I guess, to come back to it is, how much are the riots responsible for maybe encouraging the Capitol protesters to get to feel like they could get away with what they were doing? Do you think that it plays any role?
Oh, sure. I don't think it. How could it not?
Yeah.
Well, they did it, so we can do it.
Right. And they got away with it, and they were able to do this. Now, that's where they're alike and they're different. This protest with Antifa and Black Lives Matter went on for months, and it was very destructive, and it ruined a lot of businesses. The Capitol ruined the Capitol and was over in 4 hours.
But there are 5 dead.
But how many are dead from the riots with Black Lives Matter and Antifa? I mean, that is not murderless either.
No, it's not.
But I would say that there's more murders from that, and I don't have the numbers in front of me.
But the difference is the Capitol.
The difference is the Capitol?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of see that point. But
and they went in there. I don't think they had the stones to do it, but they went in there. They went in there for a revolution.
I want to see,
I mean, they had no game plan whatsoever once they got in.
Well, I don't think Black Lives Matter had a plan.
No, not at all.
There's on previous shows.
No.
Black Lives Matter to me didn't have an end game. What was the end game? Defund the police? That's not really the end game for you. The end game is probably to create a lobbyist group or to create a political party or to have some voice in the role of government. Look, we talked about defund police. Has any police department been defunded yet?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge, and not to mine either. 19 dead in the BLM riots, which is actually impressive considering how long it went on.
Yeah.
19 plus. I'm sure that there's a couple more in there, but I definitely don't want to discount anybody who did die in that. That's not that number, but around 20, let's say, which is actually probably a pretty low number in consideration of how long that went on. But yeah, I think that's what I'm talking about with this show tonight is all of the things that we're not talking about. Like we sit there and we say, well, Black Lives Matter did this and the Capitol people only did this. And then we're going back and saying, well, the Black Lives Matter people were only doing this. They weren't actually doing that. And I think they're all relative. I think the mature angle that we have to start taking in this country is recognizing that everything leads to something else. And we can't discount that. And where we let one thing get away, the next thing will happen and get worse. And I think we almost kind of came to that. Now, the other thing that I think is important as we talk about the build up to this is Trump's psyche and who he is. I almost kind of say, Wick, that I think Trump was half a great president. I think his personality as a businessman who ruled aggressively with an iron fist, a person who negotiated by aggression, a person who got where he kind of was by making big deals and being a bully in those deals. When we look at his career, and in some sense, especially when we talk about like foreign trade deals and negotiations and his efforts, to his credit, to bring manufacturing back to America or to keep manufacturing in the States, which is something I think he deserves a lot of credit on. The effort maybe didn't come to the fruition we expected, but he definitely made an effort there. He's like one half of a really good president. Unfortunately, you'd need two halves, which is a person who's a leader among the people, as far as keeping people calm in drastic, dire situations.
Well, you'll be defined in crisis, and that's the only great presidents we've had. They don't really choose to be great presidents. It's how they respond to either catastrophic events or
Right, but we've had presidents that didn't have to deal with catastrophes. I mean,
Teddy Roosevelt's a good example of that.
Clinton's a great example of that.
I don't think he's a great president.
But a lot of people do. A lot of people will look back at his 8 years and say they were really good 8 years. There's a lot of things outside of his control that caused that to happen, one of which being the dot-com boom. But there's a lot that happened under the Clinton administration that times were good.
I mean,
and there are times that presidents don't have to deal with that. I think if George W. Bush doesn't ever have to deal with 9/11, he's probably a beloved president by the time it's all over. I mean, as long as he's not dealing with a catastrophe, and he was very good in that catastrophe. But if he never has to deal with it, I think he's who you see now. I think he's a lovable guy that is goofy and people just, some will hate him because he's a Republican. But overall, I think, like we've said before, as time passes, people learn to love W. Bush.
Sadly, he's going to be defined by history.
Yeah,
with Iraq.
And we've said it. I have no doubt that W is a good man with a good heart that trusted the wrong people. I think he's gullible and got taken advantage of. Now, is that a good leader? Probably not. But I think if anything that you can say about W. Bush is his heart was always in the right place. I think he loved the military. I think it pained him to have this war. I think he felt like it was necessary. He got bad intel that he trusted. He got bad people around him that he trusted. And I've seen him with he's still very involved with the troops. I think there's a weight on his heart, still to this day, with the military in that war. And I think he's a good man. And I think if Trump never deals with coronavirus, we're probably not dealing with the protests as bad as we saw them. I think a lot of the protesting at the beginning of the year was, again, frustration from coronavirus and people being cooped up, and the frustration growing and social media. Listen, when you're not working and you don't have people to go see, you're online and you're reading these things on social media.
I'm beginning to change my mind on that because of the voting of the Republicans performing so well in down ticket. I think a lot of conservatives just became very dismayed by the character traits he was displaying, especially through tweets.
Maybe.
I think that really, really, and I'm wondering now, and we'll never know. We can only, it's only conjecture, if coronavirus, if COVID would have changed anything at all.
I think it would have. I think busy people don't have time to gather and riot. And I think,
maybe you're right, is people got a better view of him.
I don't know that they got a better view of him. I think more people were allowed to. I think when you're not working, and I think when you're stuck inside and you can't go out and you feel like a prisoner, and you're reaching out for companionship, and you're reaching out for, and I don't mean sexual companionship. I mean, you're looking for companionship in the way of friendship and people that are like you and people that feel that. I think social media had this, and I said it in our last show that I thought 2021 was going to be a year of the downtime of social media. I think social media was going to kind of take a back seat and start going backwards once the vaccine got out and people began to go back out into the world. But I think that there were a lot of people that were normally in the world, like my parents and people that were older, that suddenly found themselves looking for ways to keep up with family and friends, and they go to social media, and things kind of begin to build from that. And I think there was so much information. I mean, here's a cop shooting every 5 minutes, and there's a lot of misleading videos, a lot of conspiracies, a lot of doctored things that came out. a lot of incorrect stats and statistics, and I'm not saying that Black Lives Matter was on a false premise at all. I do think that it was on a bended premise that maybe was not the narrative that everybody believed completely. But I think when you're at home and your walls being filled up with a lot of shit on your Facebook page, it tends to lend to the frustration that you're already feeling of
It
being.
could be that. I also think the daily press conferences really injured him.
Yeah, yeah. And I think all people really wanted was him to say, listen, this is a serious thing. We want to keep the deaths as low as possible, but we also don't want to harm small businesses. We have to keep both of these things. We have to balance them. We can't have one or the other. It's going to have to be both in some way.
He was not
And
a
this,
calming presence.
right. It was not a calming presence. I think you could have come out and handled that a million times better, just like your interviews, just like your debates. This is where Trump drops the ball the last 12 months, in my opinion. And again, I'm on the fence. I was on the fence with him. I really was. And you can ask anybody that knows me, they would either say, make up your damn mind. I just didn't hate him enough. Obama was the same to me. I just didn't hate either one of them enough. I've come to realize that I think a lot of things that people felt about Trump was true. Um, so, I mean, I'm willing to throw myself on the sword for that. But I do think that he was half a good leader in the fact that I do think that you need an aggressive person in office. I think you need somebody who has a Teddy Roosevelt way about them where they have a spine. I just think that there was no empathy in his body. I think there was very little understanding of humility and
None.
how the presidency is a humbling position. Um, and I think you have people that get in that position, and he may be the first that we've really recognized that got into that position and became a position of extreme immense power instead of extreme immense compromise and extreme immense leadership and calmness. And Reagan was really great at making people feel like they were important and that they were heard and that we were all together in certain ways. I mean, you don't win all but 2 states because you're bad. I mean, he's a great communicator, right?
I mean,
And
like but in the Great Depression, FDR in the fireside chats, he would come into people's homes every day, every Sunday night, and tell them and soothe them
yeah,
and tell
it's gonna
them
be
what he
okay.
was doing to make things better. And of course, the great line, "There's nothing to fear but fear itself,"
Right.
which I think altered the national consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of my favorites, The Big Lebowski, when the nihilists show up and burn the Big Lebowski's car, and they start the fight in the parking lot, and Walt and Donnie's back there, I guess in a way asking if these are bad people or whatever. And Walt
Oh, they're
says,
cowards.
"No, they're cowards." I think sometimes I think you need that in a leadership role. Whether it's business, whether it's government. If your business is in a bad shape and you're in a bad position and you need more from people, or your team as a football coach is losing and things are falling apart, you need somebody that can come in and say, we're going to be okay, but this is what we have to do to be okay. And I need you to listen to me very carefully. And I need you to heed my words.
Yes.
These are the things that we're going to have to do. And if we'll do that, we'll be okay. We'll come together. Uh, you know, um, it's like people that have cancer. Sometimes, I noticed that I had a few friends that had cancer or had relatives that had cancer. And I would notice that everybody was, like, you know, blah, 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 and just be strong, praying for you. As a person who had of faith, I agree with that. But I begin to just tell those people, hey, I just want to get in touch with you and tell you it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And my point being that no matter what happens from this situation, whether it's life or death, and hopefully God, it's life, but it's going to be okay.
Mm.
And my wife said, I think that's interesting why you do that. I don't. Why do you kind of just you don't say much, but it's going to be okay. I said because sometimes that's just what people need to hear. They're scared to death. I've had friends with cancer scared to death. And sometimes they just need to know that somebody else out there is going to tell you it's going to be okay. Whatever happens, it's going to be okay. Because we need to hear that at times. And I think it's an important message for people to know that things are going to be okay, no matter what the result will be, no matter how we end up. And even in this situation, I want those that listen and hear me it's on my behalf. We're going to talk about what we feel like this is going to lead to. And I'm gonna say my point, and Wick's going to say his. But the one thing that I, kind of pause here and talk about, especially when we talk about Trump and his personality traits, is that I want everybody to know we're going to be okay. Things are going to be okay, but you have to make an effort to make it okay. And Trump did not do that for people. He didn't make them feel like it was going to be okay.
No. He dropping the ball is one way. He made it about him.
Yeah.
And he didn't make it about us.
Yeah.
And that I think goes obviously to the lack of empathy. I think, from my point of view, a glaring neurodevelopmental disorder. That's the only only reason I can arrive at to explain some of the lashing out of and having to demean other people, called low IQ, referring to people as low IQ individuals when he doesn't know them.
Yeah.
And calling people losers. That is not a signature of sterling mental health.
It's not, and it's completely the wrong approach. But I think that's that one half of him that half of him that also is a problem with. I think some of his greatness is that some of his problem is that his aggressiveness in handling situations blocks his ability to have empathy towards the situation and individuals and things that are happening. And I think that he's one of it's like my wife and me. My wife and me have this fight all the time. She's a very emotional person. Something happens. Okay. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's what. And my wife's a very strong woman. She gave birth to two boys, and she handles me every day. And she's a school teacher. She's a tough cookie. Okay. But she has these moments when something goes wrong, and she begins to emotionally cry. And I have a hard time with it because my thing is we have a problem. We get to work. I don't have time for your crying. I don't have time for your needs. I have this thing that's in front of us, and I need you to dry them up, and let's handle this. Let's figure out how to fix it. That's how I do things. That's me. And I have to learn to step back and understand that is her process to get to the point of solving the problem. She has to go through the emotional process. She has to grieve for herself for a minute, or she has to grieve for the situation for a minute. She has to allow the emotions all to hit her, and she has to go through it. And then when she's done, she's ready to handle the problem. And I think when I think of Trump in that same way, I think Trump is the same type of person who has a hard time relating and emotionally getting involved. And
I don't think he can emotionally get involved with people.
I think he's incapable.
He doesn't experience the world like we do.
And that's a strength at times to me, because I know it's a strength in my own life. But I know it's a downfall for me, just as much as I know on his level of being the leader of the free world. It's a definite con, because when all of this hit, his personality type and his psyche was, I've got to go out and hit harder. This situation's happened. I'm being attacked. How dare they attack me? They don't understand what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to hit back twice as hard. And I can assure you that there are people in the back behind that curtain going, Mr. President, this is probably not the right way to handle this. Mr. President, this is, and there comes a point where those poor people probably just give up. Right?
They do.
And we're seeing it now where it's like
his own former chief of staff said that he was the most profoundly flawed human being he'd ever met.
Yeah.
That everyone, all of his relationships and interactions with people or transactional. It's what you can do for me.
Yeah, but I think that's his strength in his personality of what he does for a living all his life. And I think to expect that he
Well,
was
I
going
think
to
that's
change here.
we're going to find out some very
Well, I think to think that he's going to change here or was going to change at all is very, very, very,
no, absolutely not. Narcissists
yeah,
can't change.
yeah.
I mean, they can, but
But I do believe that, listen, when we talk about the election of 2016 and why is what and how and all that, we've had our debates on this, but listen, Trump's elected for a couple of reasons. It's not because racists came out of the woodwork. If you believe that, you need to go back and please grow a mature brain, because it's not what happened. What happened was, he said, I'll bring back manufacturing, which got the northern states excited. And B, I think a lot of people voted for him because they were tired of the status quo. They were tired of the typical politician. And they got something much different. And so I think that
if you want to elect a businessman, fine, find somebody like Warren Buffett or
I think you nailed it. I think he got hired to be an economic guy. I think we hired.
And he's not an economic guy.
I don't think he's as economic as
he's a salesman.
He's a salesman. He's not the chief financial officer.
No,
he's the top salesman in the office. And I
don't know. He's not the CFO.
If we think about all the top salesmen in our jobs, we would probably be like, "Oh God," they're usually.
Mark Maron told a joke that he's like, if you didn't know who Donald Trump was and you never seen him on television, and you're in a car lot looking at a car and you see him coming for you, you just be like, oh God,
here we go.
Not that guy.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that are top salesmen, and you go, how do they do it? And then you spend a day with them, and you go, oh my God, I get it now. You have to be a certain personality type. I had somebody ask me about getting into sales, and they were like, I'm thinking about getting into sales. What do you think? And I was like, listen, the particular sales that I'm in is about relating to customers. That's a whole nother game. If your thing is to sell product, it's a tough road to hoe, because you have to be able to get up on Monday and love it. You have to love sales. And the people who love sales, that are aggressive salespeople, are not the people that you want to be the CEO of your company, because they're usually very douchey people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the truth. I mean, that's not all cases, of course, but that's in a lot of cases. That your top salesman, somebody you're like, God, what a douchebag. And those are the people that are able to grease wheels and get things done. And I think we hired Trump to be the top salesperson in America, to bring the economy back, to get in the next big industry. That's something that we're still waiting for in America, is the next big American industry. And I think a lot of people hired him to do that job. And then when Corona, and I think he was doing fine with that job. I do. I think the markets reflected that he was doing a good job with that. But then, when it came to real emotional understanding, and when it came to empathy, and when it came to being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and being able to calm and being able to be a leader in that aspect, he was one half a really good president. I liked him on economics. I thought he did a lot of good things on social issues too. I don't think he was a racist president. I think he did. If you go back and research, I think he's done a good amount of good for the Black communities that they're not seeing, and some Black people have seen it, that have given him credit. I think mandatory minimum sentencing was something that he attacked, and I think I applaud him greatly for that. He didn't get a lot of credit for.
Yep.
So he did some really good things. And I really wish, and I do think the media, I think he made the media an enemy, and the media, the media played the role fine.
Well, he definitely participated in that.
Oh, yeah, sure. You don't slap somebody in the face and expect them to love you.
Well, and call you fake news and demean what you're doing for a living.
But I think the sadness of his presidency is not only his failure to be humble in the position and to be an effective leader in tough times. Now, you can be a leader in great times and a leader in bad times. I don't think he was a good leader in bad times, because I think that goes
the character.
Yeah. But I do think, sadly, a lot of the work that he did do for Black communities will be buried. And I think that's sad because I think the next president needs to recognize, I think Biden needs to recognize that. Hopefully he will, and continue on to that, because things like mandatory minimum sentencing for drug offenses is something that really, really hits the Black community hard.
Yeah.
And that was something that Trump played a major role in doing. And let's not forget, under Trump, we're seeing a lot of drug laws lifted in states, and a lot of things have changed under
And
that.
the opioid crisis.
And the opioid, correct. He was very involved with trying to handle that opioid. So there are some really good things about Trump, but I think when it mattered the most to the actual individual in person, and because maybe the media treated him a little unfairly on his accomplishments, it's a bad picture all around by the time it's done. And his psyche and his personality didn't really help things when shit got tough, right?
He's not equipped to handle hard times.
Now, we handle his psyche. We handle how we get to this point.
Which is ironic. I wanted to bring up this point because, a lot of people say, well, he's not in touch. He can't be in touch with the average Joe because he's always been wealthy. And he doesn't have that component about his personality. But, one of the great strengths of FDR, they say, was that he came from wealth. Mm-hmm. That he was able to calm the nation because he didn't experience fear like everybody else did, because he was always safely secure in his cocoon of wealth. And it's very interesting, the two different ways that can go.
Well, and let me say this, as a member of a golf course here local in my community, there is a difference between old money and new money. I deal with new money people on this golf course all the time.
Nouveau riche.
By no means, let me put this out there before I'm called an elitist. I bought my house on practically on foreclosure, so that's why I'm here. And no means did I not do that would I be able to afford to live here. But I do live here. There is a golf course here. I've gotten very lucky, and I do deal with new money on this golf course, and it's a lot different than old money. Old money is a very different animal. When you're raised in money, it's a lot different than when you find new money and you're wealthy. And I do want to put that out there. I think there could be some difference in that, and the fact that old money, I think you come from a line of people that have wealth, and not that Trump didn't. I mean, Trump definitely did. But I think
his dad was a billionaire. Yeah,
his dad was a billionaire. But I'm not sure. I think his dad gave him his first $1 million, but I don't know the story of even before his father. I don't know if they come from generations and generations and generations of money.
No, as far as I know, his father.
Yeah, his father was the wealthy one, and that's relatively new money. People that come from a long line of money are very different people, in my opinion. Am I dealing with people that are old money? I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not. That's just something I throw out there. But let's go back to the protests at the Capitol, because that's where we are here.
Yeah.
A lot of this is breaking down how we got here, what happened. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what happened, and my question here is, what was their end game, and what happened if they found the representatives? And I think that's the question that we all have.
Yeah,
right?
That's the big question.
And here's my question for you, Wick. And I know you're going to take off.
It could have been much worse, I think.
I think this question is really in your wheelhouse. Okay. And my question is, does this prove that America is in a moral and financial bankruptcy? Are we at a point where morally and financially we're just bankrupt? Our country's bankrupt financially. Damn near close. But are we morally bankrupt at this point?
Yes.
Yeah. And is this why we see more effort for political correctness? Are we trying to correct the moral
well,
bankruptcy?
I think political correctness in its idea is one to be applauded. It's the execution of the idea. It's not, not suggesting that use certain terminology when addressing people. It's demanding that you do. And I think that's where people, jump off the train. Is
Yeah, and then
you can't say this rather than you shouldn't say that because it's offensive. And
I think there's a great word for it that you'll appreciate, and it's called, and I used it earlier. It's repressive tolerance, where intolerance, instead, you want to, you're trying to be tolerant, but you meet intolerance with force. Okay, the things that you don't tolerate, you meet with an amount of force like a hurricane. And I think that's our problem, and where I think we have moral bankruptcy in this country. And I think some people think we bail ourselves out of that by forcing people through repressive tolerance of saying, I won't tolerate this, and because you've done it, I will now violently or aggressively repress you. I will imprison you, and I will damage your life. I will damage your livelihood. I will ruin your business ranking. I will ruin your reviews on your restaurant.
well, I think it goes. You go exactly. It goes to ego. I think that I have to win this argument or everybody dies.
Wasn't it? Isn't it kind of a battle of who cares less? I mean, the person who's being offensive feels they have a right to be offensive. The person
Right.
who is intolerant to that feels like they have a right to fight back on that. It's almost like a little bit of a hamster wheel, isn't it? I mean, like where it just never ends as we're fighting moral bankruptcy. And I think that's where we are. I think we do have moral bankruptcy in this country, um, where we're almost attacking values. Now we're attacking, people of religion. Now, I mean, you can look at it between the millennial and baby boomer issue where, you know, grandkids are attacking their grandparents, and
Yeah. And
over,
grandparents are attacking their grandkids.
yes, it's going back and forth.
Mhm.
You know, life was really easy for you, and you need to, everybody thinks that it was easier for somebody else. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You don't know what I'm going through, and baby boomers are saying, you need to tighten your bootstraps tighter and you need to do more. And the millennials are saying, well, hold on a minute. When you came out of high school, you got a job that you're still working in that paid, your health insurance for you completely. And you didn't have to worry about health insurance. You didn't have to worry about, these drug
Student
epidemics.
debt.
Yeah. You didn't have to worry about unemployment, not being able to find a job. And I mean, we've just come to the point where we've lost all due respect for the other person, and that's where we talk about this moral bankruptcy happening. Now we're at the Capitol, right? And we're saying morally, it's probably not the best idea to go and attack the Capitol and its representatives and look to
Did you
kill them.
notice how young that most of them were?
Yes, yes,
That
and
was
I think it's the opposite of the liberal millennial, where you have the far right conservative millennial that is uh what's that girl's name, Tommy Lorraine or whatever, and some of these people um that are on the spotlight of Fox and whatnot, and we see it in liberals too. I mean, we have the AOCs and people like that. So I think we have this generational problem of millennials on both sides, or young people on both
it's
sides.
generational, but the underlying that is economic.
Economic and frustration, and listen, the people that are up there, that believe that, this election was thrown and all that, these are people that if you probably talk to them individually, just like the Black Lives Matter people, if you talk to them on a one-on-one level, you probably begin to have an understanding or at least an appreciation of the person, in which they're saying, listen, this coronavirus thing, we understand that it's dangerous and all this. I mean, some of them are thinking it's all hogwash, but businesses are closed down. And I've lost, I had um, I had a business that did this, and now it's gone under. I had a bar that has gone under. I had a restaurant that no longer exists. And so here's the president trying to get my business back up and running, and the liberals are in the way of it by making a bigger deal out of this coronavirus thing. And It's like we talked about. If I'm willing to risk my health to run my business, and my patrons are willing to risk their health to come patronize my business, why don't we have the right to do that? Why is that being taken away from us in certain parts of the country? And so the frustration, let's not dismiss the Capitol rioters' frustration, is very real and understandable. What they did is morally wrong. But we also, if we're going to put ourselves in the position to understand where Black Lives Matter is coming from, let's put ourselves in the position to understand where these Trump Capitol protesters are coming from. And the fact that, again, this is an election that they believe wholeheartedly was because they've been told this election was a rigged election.
That's the difference, though. And I think that needs to be pointed out. They were told something.
Yeah. They were told
Whereas
something.
if we're going from an origin point of view, they were told something, as opposed to the Black Lives Matter movement, which would witness something.
Maybe, but I think a good portion of those Black Lives Matter protesters were white millennial children.
I agree with that.
That have never suffered a day in their lives. A lot of them are Antifa people that don't care about the minorities having their lives cared for. They just wanted to disrupt capitalism, and they wanted to make a point. They wanted to do destruction. So no, I don't know that I believe that 100%. I get what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. I completely get it. But I also,
I'm saying the inciting event.
The Black Lives Matter, a lot of that was, some of that was founded on a lot of misinformation as well. I mean, there are people that were out there that were protesting. I think every time a black person gets pulled over, they're shot in the back. I mean, there was, there's a lot of misinformation, and you can look at crime statistics and you can see that's not necessarily always the case. But I do think that they were right to stand up for those situations like Floyd and the many others. The kid that was in Georgia, I can't remember his name, I apologize, that was shot jogging down the street. There are moments where this is a real deal. And for those instances, I applaud you. Absolutely 100%. But let's not believe that some of the Antifa the Antifa protests is what I would like to call them, weren't sometimes found on false pretenses themselves as things begin to get crazy, like defunding the police was not going to solve something. And there's no end game in either one of these groups. I think that there is somewhat of a parallel on moral bankruptcy here on both sides, believing look, me and you did a really great show on the social media dilemma that's on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And it says in that documentary from the people who created these programs and platforms and artificial intelligence, hey, look, our whole game our whole game was to find out what you're compatible with and then overfeed you with it. So if you're a liberal and you're a Black Lives Matter person, you're following Antifa and all this other stuff, you sure as hell you're going to get listen, if the right's getting conspiracy theories on YouTube put on their wall about voter fraud and all this other stuff, you best damn well believe that on Facebook and other social media platforms that the left was getting misinformation left and right, and that there's a black person dying every time somebody pulls them over. I mean, there is as many conspiracy theories on the left as there are on the right. We can't fake that that's not true. And so I do think that a lot of people protested on false pretenses.
There is a man sitting in the most powerful seat in the world.
I agree.
Propagating conspiracy theories.
That's where I was going.
Now the question becomes, does he believe it?
I think he believes it without proof, because I think his psyche disallows him to believe he lost.
That he lost an election to Joe Biden. Yeah.
Right. And I don't either. I mean, I gotta be honest with you. It wasn't until this last year. Look, me and you discussed it like at the beginning of the year, and I thought, no, wait, Trump's going to probably take this thing. I think Biden's a terrible nominee. I still think Biden's a terrible nominee. I really do. I just think that people just wanted out of the situation. And I'll be honest with you, I am not so sure how many people went into that voting booth and voted Democrat because they were terrified that there were going to be more protests. There are people that I do believe, and it's not everyone by any means, but I think there's a percentage, and it may be very small, but I do think there's a percentage of people that went in and voted for Biden because they were terrified of another riot in November. And that's
I think it's the old Carville saying it's the economy.
I don't think so. I think there was real fear that in November, if he wins, there's going to be more riots. And most certainly there would have been. I believe that. I think there would have been more riots.
I don't know. Do you really think so? I don't know anybody that would have done that.
Do you know anybody
that would go in and vote
place?
against, that voted for? I'm sorry?
I mean, do you know anybody who did it the first time around?
I don't. Voted for Trump
that rioted over the Black Lives Matter thing, like went out and rioted.
Oh, no. What I'm saying is I don't think anybody went and voted for Biden just because they were afraid of more riots on the left.
I do. I think there's a percentage. It may not have. Hey, listen, it's like voter fraud. It probably happens, but it's not enough to sway an election. That's not what I'm saying. I am not saying that Biden won because people were afraid of it. I do think that there was a percentage of people who weren't sure how they were going to vote, and there was a certain thing inside of them that said, you know what? I'll be damned if Trump wins, then we got to deal with this protest all over again. I'm just going to go ahead and do my Biden vote.
Biden won because he displayed more empathy when people were needing that.
I don't think so. He was non-existent, dude. I mean, this guy was living in his basement. He had nobody coming out to his rallies. I think Biden won by default because Trump was a horrible leader the last year. And I think people would have rather have gone with Biden and Harris than to continue on with what they saw was failed leadership in the last year. There's a lot of
well be true.
Yeah, there's a lot of Republicans.
It could be like the NFL. You don't make a play, the other guy makes a mistake.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's interception that changes the game, and I think it just comes down to, without coronavirus, I think there's a lot of people that think without coronavirus, it's all a domino effect. Without the coronavirus, do we have the Black Lives Matter protest? If we don't have those in a major way, then is the economy still strong? If the economy is still strong and there's no push on Trump to have to be empathetic and be humbled, then is he still strong? Is the economy still strong? Yes. He probably still votes this. He probably still wins this re-election.
I don't know. I really don't know because of how the Rust Belt almost immediately moved back blue, even in the midterms in 2018.
They did, but there's still struggles in Pennsylvania. There was still a little struggle here in Michigan.
There was
still a little struggle.
There was a little bit, but they elected Democratic governors between 16 and November.
Democratic strongholds. This is why the argument for me infuriates me when people say racists came out and voted in 2016. And if you say that to me, I will probably palm you in the nose.
No, racists always vote. Right.
They hold everybody back and then they all go vote and they chain up anybody who's not going to vote racist. He won some Democratic strongholds in 2016. Okay.
And Biden won because he flipped some Republican strongholds.
He did, especially Georgia. But here's my point. Even in those situations, these are tight races by the time it's over. So there's still some stronghold that Trump holds in Pennsylvania. There's still some stronghold Trump holds in Georgia. There was still some stronghold. I mean, when you look at the final numbers, these are huge numbers for both. I mean, I mean, at the end of the day, the total number of votes, let's see, popular vote, 2020. I mean, we're still looking at, of course, nobody gives me the numbers. Give me numbers. Okay. 81 million versus 74 million. I mean, we're talking less than 5%. And this is state to state. And some of those were, 48%. I mean, we can't dismiss the fact that Trump is still very strong in blue states. I mean, he's still given a hell of a fight in this election. A lot of these can't be called for days and days. Arizona, I mean,
Pennsylvania,
Georgia. So no, I still think that he had a stronghold. But I think that the difference here is that people feel like in that last couple of months, Trump wasn't very strong. I think they saw the weakness in his character, but I do think that there's some portion of this vote that says I'm done with the shit that was 2020. I'm done with all the shit that was 2020.
No one in something,
and I need something new. And if you were on
It's
the
probably
fence,
it's probably very similar in that way to 1980.
yeah, yeah, very much so. Yeah, I need something. I need this shit to be done, and the only way I'm going to get this shit done is to change horses. And I think we can't discount that. And I think as we come to this portion of of the year where the election's done, you know, Trump's not going to give up his seat and he's not going to leave the White House. And it was all of, we've got people investigating. Oh, man. We get into this moral bankruptcy situation where now people are meeting to and discussing, you know, how are we going to handle this problem? Right? How are we going to handle this issue? Because somebody just stole the election. Are we just going to sit here and lay down? Or are we going to do something about it? And that's why I think, yes, how
And
they went
that's
about it,
and
how
that's
they
interfering in the democratic process.
it's interfering in the democratic process unless you believe. Now, again, I want people to take themselves out of the comfortable position they're in and say, if somebody told you that you trusted, let's say you know somebody at the CDC and they're telling you, man, there is a virus that is going to be, you know, that's going to hit, we're already tracking it, we can't control. You're probably going to take that very serious. And how many times do we hear it? I know a guy who works for the CDC, or I know a girl who works in the White House, and
I heard that was
yeah,
a big. It's a great flaw when people
yeah,
say, "Well, you know what? I heard that one person." Did you
and
hear? Did you see?
everybody, you know what everybody's source is? Everybody's source is social media.
Yeah,
Stop bullshitting each other. Your source is social media, and whatever conspiracy theory you're following on the right or left. But the truth of the matter is that, you know, now we're in a morally bankrupt society. So much to the point where they believe that they've got to take the Capitol. Um, you know, in fairness, in a mirror situation, we have Black Lives Matter or slash Antifa try to break into a federal courthouse and burn it down. Um, I agree that they're not comparable before you go there. I understand that, but we have this no limits, all things are open for taking in these demonstrations, and nothing is sacred, right? We're in a position where nothing's sacred, and we're really dealing with the moral bankruptcy. And you know, our thoughts are being hijacked, our beliefs are being hijacked because either a leader is telling you one thing or the social media is telling you another. And then we just begin to just morally bankrupt ourselves to the point where we're not in the communication anymore, you know? And then it leads up to this frustration of a 2020, this 2020 frustration takes over. And it's kind of like, I understand how people got to there, whether you're Black Lives Matter or whether you're, I don't know what we say, Trump extremist. I understand how you got where you are. I think that's the thing that we're missing when we talk about these things is the understanding of how it's hard for liberals to understand that these stupid right-wing nut jobs, these hillbillies, believe that this election was rigged. They believed it. And they were out to fix it. So my question now comes to you that we're here. It's happening. It's happening. It's really happening. Where do we come about where we can gather and protest? And when does protesting need to be eradicated from getting worse in a situation? So here's what I'm talking about. Black Lives Matter is marching down the street, no problem. The police are directing them in a certain way, you know, and then it gets a little hot. And then it's going crazy. And then people start saying, why isn't the National Guard being pulled out? Okay. And then we have people saying, well, they have the right to do what they got to do. I mean, you know, they have a right to gather and they have a right to protest. Now, on the other end, here we are at the Capitol. Where's the National Guard? Right? They have a right to gather. They have a right to protest. We have to decide now, because of the moral bankruptcy of these situations. Now we have to almost reevaluate our rights, because now when is gathering going to be a problem? When is gathering and having the right to assemble going to become a bad thing? Because we've almost ruined it for everybody else, haven't we? Going forward.
Then it definitely infringes on the First Amendment issue.
Right.
You definitely have the right, but at what point? And that's the great discussion right now.
Right. That is the great discussion right now, and we're the only people talking about it.
And then there's the
where does the right end?
And now you're hearing from the right about big tech and their freezing accounts and from their point of view, neutralizing free speech. But the First Amendment does not protect you from corporations; it protects you from the government.
Let's talk about.
Corporations are free to do what they want.
Right. 100%. Here's the hypocrisy in these arguments. And there's hypocrisy on the right and left all the time. The thing is that if I can beg people that listen to the show to understand, step away from your own hypocrisies. And this is what I mean. If a baker doesn't want to bake a cake for a gay couple, he has the right. But Zuckerberg doesn't have the right to take social media away from Trump. That's free speech. When do we understand that we have a very hypocritical way of looking at things, depending on where we're standing at that moment?
When it infringes on our agenda.
Right. So what's your agenda? That's one thing. Let's just take a pause. It's almost like that book for dummies. Let's take a pause and let's look at the little subscript underneath. Understand when you're exercising hypocrisy and step away. If you're telling me that a baker has a right to refuse a gay couple who wants them to make them a wedding cake because it's against what he believes, why is it not the same for social media, privately held? Well, I guess they're publicly held now, but a CEO of a company saying, you know what? I don't agree with some of the messages this guy's put out. I feel like he can be dangerous, especially in the last couple of days here. Next couple of days, we only got 10 more.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to shut him down just because I don't want to be responsible for another riot.
Mm-hmm.
How are you now all of a sudden in the right to go, well, they can't do that? So the gay couple doesn't have a right to ask the baker to make him a cake. Right? But social media, CEOs of social media companies should not have the right to tell people, I'm not going to allow you to tweet anymore. Well, guess what? When you enter into the agreement, that's part of the agreement.
Yeah.
All right. Now, my point is that everybody, if you own something, you should be able to do whatever you want within legal, ethical, and moral reasons. If you don't want to bake a cake for a gay couple, that's on you. And if you're the gay couple, by all means, why are you forcing someone who doesn't like you and believe in your life, in your lifestyle, and your happiness? Why are you paying them to do it?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I look at that and go, and it's a very simple.
They're probably going to make a very bad cake.
Right. Like my thing is going to be like, well, okay, I know where you stand now. That's fine. I'm not going to pay you to do it. I'm going to find somebody who supports my lifestyle or, listen.
And you also have the right to go out and ruin their business.
I guess you do, but at the same time, I think what I'm searching for is where do we get the moral aptitude to be a little bit higher where we are? To me, that's moral bankruptcy. Moral bankruptcy is when somebody does something you don't agree with. And instead of discussing it or finding a common ground or understanding their position or having or trying to understand who they are, you just automatically, practice, intolerance and you just ruin who they are. Well, you haven't ended the war. You've begun the war. And I think that's the problem is that everybody's trying to win a war that is ridiculous to win. Right. I mean,
it's called a Pyrrhic victory.
Yeah. It's a temporary
when the
solution.
Consequences of the victory are,
you're permanently solving a temporary problem.
are worse than what you've gained from winning it.
But listen, I have a spiritual thing about me. I believe in God. I pray. I do all these things. But I don't have any issue with making a cake for gay people. I have a zero issue at all. I don't, as
I
long
have
as
an
you're
issue with
good,
making cakes because it's a
right?
nightmare.
I just hate making cakes. But no, I would never refuse anybody because I think even if I don't understand or even if I'm not privy to your lifestyle or the things, there's certain things I'm not going to make a cake for a pedophile. I mean, there's certain things that I draw the line, but by all means, I try to understand everybody as a person and not as a group. But here we are in this situation where now the right's upset because Trump's being censored. But can we talk a little bit about free speech? Can we educate people because it's been a thing that people have been using on social media quite a bit. And I want to correct a lot of my friends on the right. You do not have freedom of speech wherever you want it.
No, you are not protected. The Constitution only protects you from government interference.
That's right. Now, if you want to go to a government building and you want to say some horrible things, as long as you're not making threats, you have freedom of speech. You have freedom of speech protection within government property. That's the hook. Okay. You don't have freedom of speech if you come visit my home. You don't have freedom of speech if you go to where Wick works. You don't have freedom of speech to stand in the parking lot of my work and say whatever you want to. We have to understand that just because you're an American doesn't mean you have freedom of speech everywhere you go. That is a misconception, right, Wick?
Absolutely, it's a misconception.
I think it's a little bit abused by people who just think that I have freedom of speech wherever. And this is a big problem.
That nobody has, the misinterpretation being that nobody has the right to interfere with my expression
and my rights.
And the constitutionally only protects you from the government
right
interfering in that.
Right. But then people sit there and say horrible things on this new Parler, which is going to be the Facebook for conservatives, which is going to become a problem too, because a lot of people are calling for them to have some type of moral, ethical code, some type of way to monitor hate speech. This is going to be a nasty battle.
Yeah. It's going to be a very interesting battle because
Now, to me,
I am fervently behind the First Amendment.
I don't care.
It's the foundation of democracy. It's what defines democracy.
Right, but let's correct what you're saying because I want to make sure I understand you. You understand Zuckerberg's stance on Facebook.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think that you have the right to go anywhere and say what you want.
But you also understand Parler's, hey, we're not monitoring what you say.
That's their right to do it, to not monitor. Mm-hmm. From another standpoint, it could pose enormous liability issues.
It could, because that's where we're going next, which is a lot of really scary things that have been said on Parler. There's a lot of talk before this riot began of organizing this protest, let's say. Mm-hmm. I don't think it became a riot until actually it broke through. But they organized this protest, and then there's a lot of talk about shooting representatives in Parliament and groups. As now here's where we kind of get back to this thing where we say, okay, you have a right to assembly. Where do we draw the line, right? Before we get into burning buildings. And I have no issue with people that are standing up for what they believe. I have no problem with the people that thought the election was stolen being there and protesting.
Not at all. That's their right.
Right. My problem comes into property damage because there's a lot of business owners that lost a lot of property in these protests that shouldn't have lost their properties. There were a lot of innocent people that had bars that they saved up. There was a story about a black fireman, and I don't remember where the city was, where he saved up every penny he had to open up a sports bar so he could quit being a fireman. And I think it had been open a couple of months and it was burned to the ground. And you know what? And you know what? I'm going to stand on a soapbox because I've had this fight with a couple of liberals over this who say, well, they had insurance, it'll be fine. That's bullshit.
I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
Hey, you
Don't,
ever try to collect from insurance?
they'll be fine because they had insurance. Insurance will pay
No,
it back. No, no, you have a certain amount of insurance for the property.
it's not
But
going to
getting
save your business, though.
that's not going to save your business. And it's not going to keep you going for income. And it doesn't make it okay because I have insurance, doesn't make it okay for you to burn my house down.
No.
It's not okay. That's a worst, poorest excuse. And if that's what you use, fuck off, because I think that's a terrible way of looking at things. It's not okay for you to take property from somebody and ruin it and destroy their livelihood and then say, hey, it'll be fine. You've got insurance. What's wrong is wrong. And so when we come to these protests, you are fine with me. Black Lives Matter, it was all good. Everything was fine. When buildings began to burn, when people's personal properties were lost, I had a real big issue. I have the same feeling here because I think even though it's a public building, because it's a government building, I don't know how much damage they did. Do you know if they did a lot of damage to the building? I never looked.
I don't think they did that much damage. I mean, it's a pretty
Well,
it's pretty well built.
it is pretty well built. And I kind of wonder, Wick, what we'll find out in the weeks to come, because I watched, me and you had talked on that day. And I was watching it, and I actually messaged Wick, and I was like, dude, look, they're going into the Capitol, and he's like, what? I mean, I don't know if I have a weird feeling, dude, because I would love to know what we'll find out in the weeks to come. Because as I'm watching these people go into the building, they're walking down the velvet roped walkway, taking pictures. I don't know if it got increasingly bad after more people got in. I don't know. I just know that these people came in, and I'm watching them enter because they had cameras there, and they're following the path of velvet ropes, and they're taking pictures with their cameras. And it was almost like watching tourists come in. I don't
Well,
know.
I don't think everybody in the group had the same agenda.
No, not at all. Not at all. I invite anyone to go look at the original beginning of them getting into the Capitol, and it's almost like, and I hate to say it because it sounds terrible, but it was like Japanese tourists. They had gotten into a place, and all of a sudden everybody kind of stops, pulls out their cameras, and they start taking pictures of the inside. Like, oh, look at that. There's a painting. Oh wow, that's cool. Like, and they're following this velvet rope trail to the door. And nobody's breaking out. Nobody's kicking those ropes.
Well, also too, what's very interesting is that what could have saved even further violence is the fact that they were in session.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were on the House floor.
Yeah.
I mean, what if they were sporadically through the building in their offices at the time,
or not even there?
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
do these people get in? I mean, I get the Buffalo guy and everything, and everybody's got jokes, and yeah, he definitely goofy. But I mean, like, there's a dude, they're posing for pictures in front of, paintings, and they're going. Now, I don't want to paint these guys as innocent. Please don't get that. But it's a really weird narrative how this thing begins.
You should see the video of the officer getting crushed in the doorway.
Yeah. Now,
that gives you a more, I guess, robust picture of what went on.
And furthermore, can we talk about the hypocrisy of Blue Lives Matter? Now, these are the groups of people that are running around talking about Blue Lives
Matter, and now suddenly
they're shit. Now now it's just trash.
That's what's so disconcerting about this movement is, like, once you're not in line with us, you're the abject enemy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching these people,
and how quickly it turns.
Yeah, I'm watching these people as it begins, and we're starting to see it get a little bit out of control. And I had a friend that shared that, and I won't say his name because he's private, but he's a bit liberal, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna send this video over to you," and okay, and I'm watching it, and it's getting a little bit out of control, and I'm watching these police on the rails, and they're just getting, you piece of garbage, you piece of trash, you're a part of this and you're doing this and you're destroying
or
our
even
country.
or even Pence.
Yeah. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
hold on a minute. You know, I can guarantee you folks on, if I went to your social media pages, you would have had
Who
something
does
about how
who
Black
does that
Lives
behave?
Matter
Who
or
does that
Blue
behave?
Lives Matter.
Who does that behavior remind you of?
Well, I mean, you mean the switch quick?
Yeah, like once you're not,
Yeah. Once you're not my friend, you're my enemy.
once you don't have, I don't have any use for you.
I
Once you
don't
don't,
know. I mean, I would like, listen to me. Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. I think they both matter. I don't know that I mean, I find that I have a little bit more respect for, I have more respect for what Black people are going through and empathy for that. I also have a lot of empathy for what police officers go through every day. I don't think anybody's winning that. I think they're both going through a lot. But to sit there and and this is what we're talking about. Are you being hypocritical? Step back, because I think it solves a lot of issues. If you're preaching Blue Lives Matter 3 months ago and now you're yelling at the police that are at the barriers and calling them garbage and that they're part of the
well, I
problem.
also think this is a very fringe element of the right. And most conservative friends I have would not do that
Right.
and admonish what happened. And I think we have to take that into account.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think in all
and
these
I'm
cases,
also
we're talking
saying
about extremes.
from a progressive point of view is we also need to be more gracious winners.
And losers.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very important.
Yeah. I don't, I mean, it's time to heal. I'm very fearful that we won't, but.
Well, can we touch on that? Because I understand the desire to impeach Trump in the next 10 days.
This is a very interesting, it's a precarious issue.
I think you let it go. I think you let it go.
I think you let, on one hand, I say let it go. On the other hand, I say, well, they're in Washington and there is a rumor mill going around in Washington and they know more of what's going on than we do.
It doesn't matter. If you want this thing to heal.
But he's got the launch codes.
The absolute worst thing you can do.
And there is no apparatus in place to stop that.
But listen, if you want to heal, it's like I jumped on. There was a representative that ran for office locally here, and she didn't win. And I had voted for her, but she goes on this rampage, and it's a backhanded slap in the face to conservatives in our county. That has to do with the Capitol protesters, and she's basically trolling. Oh, these people should be shot on sight, wink, wink, basically switching the Capitol protesters in with what people were saying about the Black Lives Matter protesters, just, I said, I go, I can't believe you ran for office. I furthermore can't even believe I voted for you, because you're now on Facebook and you're trolling people. You're trolling conservatives about what happened at the Capitol. Instead of being mature, instead of being a leader and saying, you know what, it's time to heal. I get what you're doing. I get what you're saying. I get what you think you're doing. But here's the problem. It's the same issue I have with white privilege. If you want to talk to white people about understanding what Black people go through, can I give you a hint? The moment that you start with white privilege, you get a defensive white person. Every time. I don't, and I told her, I said, I don't know what you thought you were going to accomplish with that. Did you think that you were going to go on Facebook and troll a bunch of conservatives in your county?
Yeah.
And they were going to suddenly listen to you? They're not going to. So what are you doing? So you've come here as somebody who wanted to be a leader. And I said, maybe that's some of the problem with our country. Maybe it's an immaturity level. Maybe we're electing people that don't have the maturity to be above par. And they're morally bankrupt when they go on Facebook and they troll people who didn't vote for them. And we see it with the Trump group, right?
Well, there's an element of social media where, I mean, you don't have immediate consequences.
So,
I mean, there are consequences,
Right.
but you're not standing in somebody's face,
You're not
and
looking.
the social contract is expired at that point.
And I told her, I said, you're not looking for people to disagree with you. You're hunting for the people that agree with you. I mean, you control these guys. You control the conservatives. You control them. The result is that they're going to be angry, right? And they're going to say something back to you. You're not feeding on that. What you're feeding on are the people who agree with you and say, "Oh, exactly, right on, perfect, like, love, like, care." That's what you're hunting for. But what are you doing? Because what you've done is you've completely played in the decisive problem that we have in this country.
But so do you think him not impeaching is a move towards healing? A move towards reconciliation?
Yes. Because what you're telling me is that immediately what you've said is you've called for healing. And you've done that by absolutely first opportunity is to throw somebody out on the street that you don't agree with, that you didn't like what they said, that you didn't like that. I get it. I understand. Maybe if he has 6 more months in office, I get it. 10 days, I think it's insulting. I think it's a waste of resources. I think you've got bigger problems. You've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. I have a big thing that I say, know when you've won. Okay.
Also, don't get in the way of your opponent self-destructing.
Right. He's got 10 more days. He's already said he's not going to stand in the way. I don't know. Listen, people I don't know what he's going to do if he sits in his office and he refuses to leave. What are we going to do? They're going to arrest him.
Let that happen.
What do you mean?
For the entertainment value of it.
Listen, the Secret Service on January 20th switches over to a retired Secret Service that watches after the. These are not people that are going to. I think
that's part of why they're thinking about impeachment, because he will lose his pension, he will lose his. So
what?
His travel.
What? You think he's going to use that money for anything? I mean, he may money in the bank.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
You got money in the bank. You're not going to hurt this guy.
I think more
going to hurt. Listen,
sit back and watch what happens after he leaves. It's going to be even more.
You're not going to hurt Trump. You're going to hurt the people that voted for him. And if you want healing, that's not what you do. What my suggestion would be, and Pelosi needs to get off of her fucking bullshit and quit looking for ways to impeach this guy, even with 10 days 10 days left, 9 days, and say, you know what has happened has happened. It's a terrible situation. But I think that our party is looking towards growing and healing. And if that means that we have to talk with conservatives better and we have to get a better understanding of where they're coming from, then that's what we have to do, because we have to go through a new era in this country. We have to change the.
Well, I mean, if they're thinking, if they feel like they need to punish him, things are going to happen when he's out of office.
Yeah,
he's in dire legal jeopardy.
Yeah, just wait.
And just let it take its course.
Poor Pence. I feel worse for Pence. I mean,
Pence, my God.
Listen, and these protesters really listen. It wasn't just the Democrats these guys were going to rip apart. If they'd have found Pence, Pence was going to get a shit kicked in. Why? Because Pence knew deep down, I'm going to do what's best for the country. And whether or not he had he had a way of being able to hold up the electoral, but whatever he could have done. Deep down in the back of his mind, pray for Pence. Good Lord. I mean,
he did the right thing.
He did the right thing. And the whole thing is that, his cell phone rang all day for weeks on end with, what we got to do. Don't let me down. We got to do. We got to fight that thing now. I've been talking to so-and-so. I'm going to send him. I'm going to make him call you. He's going to call you and tell you exactly what to say and what to do. Now, this is your responsibility, and here's the legal right of it. We have to do that. And Giuliani's going to call too, and we're going to get this all worked out, blah, 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 blah. And Pence is probably getting off the phone like, God dang, dude. It's like I've gotten caught up in a bank robbery, and I can't get out of it. I've been hired as a getaway driver, and I didn't even want to do it, right? And now I've got to be at the bank at noon, and they're going to go in, and now I got to drive these people back. I don't even want to be there. I don't even want to do that. If I don't, though, they're going to kill me. I mean, it's one of those things where Pence was in this impossible situation, and he still did what's right. And I don't think that people are giving him enough credit. Listen, there's going to be books. There's going to be books and books and books and books and books.
He's going to come out the hero with this.
Yeah, I mean, and trust me, if you think Pence is ever going to have a political career again, I think he's going to choose to opt out.
I would.
I would too. He's going to get his pension. He's
Well,
going
he
to get his money.
doesn't really have a future.
Yeah, listen, he'll
And that
probably,
brings us to another question: is the future of the Republican Party?
and we're going to get there. We're going to get there. But I do think that Pence is probably going to be some mayor of a small town in Indiana, and he's going to be like, he's going to find a red county, and or a red city, and he's going to be the mayor of a city, and he's going to say, "I'll never go into federal politics again. I'm done."
Or he'll go into the
I
private
don't blame
sector.
him. Yeah, he'll go in the private sector. I don't blame him. I mean, if you want to feel bad for anybody in this situation, please light a candle for Mike Pence, who, whether or not you hate him or love him because of his belief system or whatever, a guy said, you know what, I'm going to stand up there, I'm going to do what's right, I'm going to get this thing over with, and I want to get out of here as fast as possible.
Well, the irony was these patriots were, they were out to, let's say, assassinate somebody who was being a true patriot.
Yeah. And I mean, he's you know what? Look, let's take a lesson from Pence here. Pence knew to heal the country, he had to stand up and say he's going to count the electoral votes and get this election done. He could have very well done what Giuliani and Trump wanted him to do and find any kind of legal avenue to stall this thing and give Trump, more days in office before it's settled and all this. He could have done all that.
I don't even understand what Trump's game plan was with that. If he holds up the electoral vote, I mean, what's the end game? How does that get you another 4 years?
I don't know. And there had to have been something there that they could use. It's probably going to be a real stretch. And Pence had to be the guy to do it. And Pence is like, you know what? No. And I think we need to take a lesson there that when we know something's right and we know that we've got to do the right thing, this is what we have to demand from our elected officials. When you know something's right, you do it. It doesn't matter the consequences. Do you think that his time in the White House for the next 9 days is pleasant?
Oh my God.
It's hell. It's hell.
They're all in hell.
They are in hell. And still, he did the right thing. And he said, you know what? No matter what I've got to take for the next 15 days, I'll take it because it's the right thing to do. Okay? Because this election was not rigged, folks.
No.
And Pence stood up. So Democrats take a lesson and see that and go, you know what? Let's just end this thing. Let's get it over with. The pension, it's $100,000 a year. He's got millions. Let's just move on. Let's just put him back in the private sector. If we want to press charges with him later, we can do that. And these books are going to come out. There's going to be book after book after book.
Well, there's also the concern with Iran.
You're going to be sick of Trump books by this time next year. You're going to be sick of them because everybody that was in that White House is going to write one.
But there's also the issue with Iran and what 10 days sitting in the most powerful seat in human history.
There's a check and balance, I believe, that still has to be. I don't think that Trump can get the codes whenever he wants them. There's a process.
No, that I've looked into that. There is no apparatus
for him to launch nuclear missiles. I don't think that's true.
I mean, somebody can stand up and prevent it from happening, tackle him, I guess. But legally speaking, in terms of protocol, there's no apparatus in place.
There's a 2-man rule when it comes to launching nuclear missiles. The president has the right to order the release of nuclear weapons, but the order must be verified by the Secretary of Defense. And they both have the codes. The president has the codes, but so does the Secretary of Defense, and they both have to put in their codes together.
Right.
So there's the likelihood is not.
It's not great.
It's not going to happen.
But not just limited to nuclear codes.
Yeah, how much damage can you do in 9 days? Probably a pretty good bit. Can we fix it? We probably could. I mean, unless you're talking about nuclear weapons, as we just discussed, which is likelihood's not. Strong likelihood that's not going to happen. So I think you let him. I mean, ego's hurt. His wing's broken. His heart's broken. Everything about him's broken. He's a broken man at this point. He'll never admit it.
He was broken before.
Well, now I think the obvious broken is happening. And
the rest of his life. I mean, how long do you expect him to live after this?
Well, listen, I think he's broken from the standpoint that I think his family, behind closed doors. Now you've got Junior and all this other stuff, but I think I give them a lot more credit to be smarter than they have to play. And I think behind closed doors, there's been a lot of talk about his family, especially his sons and his daughter, um, saying, "Look, you know, this is done." And I think that was one of his strongest core support systems was his family, his immediate family. And I have to think after what I've heard that they're basically saying, let's just let's let this thing go. We got other things that we can be doing, Dad. We can jump back in the construction business. We can do this and look at the perfect opportunity we have in South America. And blah, blah, blah. I think that there's a lot of that going on, and I think he will never admit it, but I think deep down there's probably some recognized idea that, okay, deep down, if you probably look deep, 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 when his family starts to tell him, you know what, this let's just end this. Let's don't go that. I think he knows it's done. So hopefully that has some play. It's kind of like when your kid tells you or your wife tells you enough's enough. You kind of start. You insult the family at the table and you have political arguments when your wife pulls you aside or your kid says, oh, or like the abusive parent, right? That's abusing their spouse not that it's funny, but the kid says, it's enough, Dad. And then everything kind of stops. I think sometimes in these situations, rational voices, I don't think it'll be Giuliani and those guys who are still
oh God,
fighting the fight.
What has happened to that man?
I don't know, but it's embarrassment. It is embarrassing. I mean, I don't think you can be a conservative not be embarrassed for Giuliani at this point. But I think there's some respect that the family now is saying, okay, yeah, hang it up. So I guess my point being is that in 9 days, I think that you'll hear very little. I don't think he's going to the inauguration. I think that's a good thing. Whether or not you want to say he's pouting or what, listen. I see people all the time. I saw a report where he said he wasn't going to the inauguration. People are like, "Oh, he's going to pout. He's going to." You know what? Let him go. Like, what do if you want to heal and we want to move on, then just let him go. If he wants to get on his little helicopter and
if
he
you
wants
want to punish him, if you really want to punish him, stop giving him attention.
Yeah, I mean, listen, put him on his little helicopter, fly him back to Trump Towers, let him reinstate himself as the president of Trump Corporation. Let him
I don't
go.
think he's going to be able to live in New York City anymore.
Maybe not, but he's got plenty of places. I mean, his golf course situation is always pretty strong. It's a lot stronger than people realize. So you go what is it, Mar-a-Lago or whatever it's called. I mean, I think he can go find something to do. But let him get on his helicopter and ride. Why do you gotta have him there? Because you want to see his face when Biden takes his thing. You want to see the transfer. No, just let him go. Pence will do all that. Pence will do the transfer of power, and he'll do the whole thing. It's over. Look, it's not Trump's day anyway. Any more than it was, any more than it was Bush's day.
And let's get on with what's next, because it's Biden is now taking that seat.
When Trump won the election, Obama was very minimally involved. Okay, Obama. It's not Trump's day. So if he doesn't want to be there, I mean, listen, if it was anybody else, I would say, you know what, you do what you have to. But at this point, when what we know and how things have gone, if he doesn't want to be there, so what? Be even more rejoiced that he's not going to be there if you're a liberal. Say, you know what, I'm glad he's not going to be there. But this whole idea that we've got to rub it and we got to keep this thing going and we got to impeach him and I don't think that heals anything. I really don't. I think it's insulting to the conservatives that you say you want to. And I think that, I think a little bit of I think the GOP representatives would probably would say, look, why are we wasting this on 9 days of this when we can be doing other stuff? We got things that we got to get in order. And they're going to look like they're more together than the Democrats will. If the Democrats are stuck on the impeachment part of it, it's going to look as ridiculous as it did before. I mean, you've done the impeachment thing. It doesn't work. People were on board until it got stupid and then they got off. If you think people are going to be on board in the next 9 days, they're going to get bored. They want to move on. They want to move forward. It's like Sun Tzu's Art of War. When things go on too long, people lose interest, and wars go on too long, they lose interest. And this is a war. And when you keep it going, people will lose interest. They don't care. I think it's a bad look on the Democratic Party if they keep this is all a Pelosi Schumer bullshit thing. Just let it go. It's getting the last laugh. It's ripping the paper up after a speech. It's all this other stuff. Just we need maturity. We need a level of maturity now, and we need a hand reached out to the across the table and say, look, that was crazy. Because look, I believe Wick, a lot of Trump probably had a lot of representatives in fear for the fact they just didn't want to deal with him. They probably had to go along with a lot of stuff just because they didn't want to deal with him. You think?
Oh, absolutely. You look at,
Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham were both insulted by Trump on a regular basis, and now they have to they have to toe the line, right? It's politics. They got to toe the line. And if you probably talk to him in the back room, Cruz is probably like, "Yes, let's just get on with things." Like, can we just move on? Because I think a lot of them had to live in this Pence universe where the big boss is demanding these things, and my God, if you don't do them, you'll never stop hearing from him. Your phone's going to blow up. He's going to send somebody over to talk to you. He's going to make sure that you understand exactly what he wants. Like, he's a micromanager, and I think once he's gone, a lot of the GOP is probably going to breathe a little easier, and you can start to work together. But I think if you drag them through an impeachment process, you're going to start off on a bad foot. You're going to make them defensive because you're going to have to call their judgment in question. And it's like the white privilege thing. When you start an argument like that, you're not going to get anybody to listen. If you start this impeachment for 2021, the GOP is going to shut down and they're so done with it. And I think the people are done with it. I think we're very tired.
I also think it's a political move.
It's an absolute political move. It's
forcing this,
He may not even be there. My man might be down there playing golf right now. He may not even be there. Okay? You may be wasting your time. But I think we can look at all this in two simple ways, and this is where I kind of want to get. I want to tap your brain because we're going to talk about where we kind of got and where we're going to, the future of these parties, like you said, especially the Republican Party. Focus on that. I think we can look at this in two simple ways. Maybe either the citizens of all walks of life, when you look at the BLM protest and you look at the Capitol protest, citizens of all walks of life are fed up with the system and those in it. Period. Or our system is faulty, and that it trusts society to be too self-responsible. And I think that's where we're going to be, where we're talking about, again, moral bankruptcy and moving on from that topic is, either, both of these groups saw injustice somewhere or thought they did. And either they're standing up to what they feel like is a bad system and the people that are in it, the people who have been in it for years and years and years with no term limits, or our system is faulty and that it trusts society to be too self-responsible and we're not ready for that.
It's an interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, conservatives believe that we're in cultural Marxism in our school systems. That's a buzzword they keep preaching. You're going to hear more and more of it. You're going to hear cultural Marxism, more and more of it. The Republicans believe, or conservatives believe, that this ideology of socialism and Marxism is being taught in the school system to prepare kids to come out, and like this big plan for socialism to take over America is happening. Right? I mean, you're already hearing that kind of stuff, aren't you, Wick?
Yeah, of course.
And then, but to my opinion,
and I've expressed this to some of my conservative friends. These were the exact same talking points when FDR took office.
Yeah. Well,
and you're living in the country that he molded.
Right. And let's don't forget McCarthyism and, communism, in what was that, the 50s, right?
This is nothing new.
This is nothing new,
Yeah.
That this plan of Marxism has been going on since the beginning of time. That, if you dig deeper into it, there's these two Marxist professors who implanted this system to implode over the years, and now we're finally hitting it where it's hitting its stride, and now kids want socialism. On the other end, I think liberals just kind of simply
Yeah.
and other people who might be rude with their freedoms by using their regressive tolerance on them.
Yeah.
It's just basically being forcefully intolerant. And then you got liberals that feel like conservatives are out of touch, that there's too many gray hairs and Christians involved in the conservative movement.
Well, I think particularly the GOP has an issue with fractionalization now that is going to be disruptive at best going forward.
Well,
I mean, was it which one of Donald's sons said this is Trump's party now? And that's after he lost the election. That was in the last week.
I think the arguments for that was, how many million did we say voted for him? I think it was like 70. No, it was 74 million. He still has the ear of 74 million people.
Yeah.
Is this Trump's?
And I for one believe that they're more loyal to Trump at this point than they are the GOP.
Okay, so let's explore that. And what I was going to say is that there's basically this ideology that conservatives believe that there's Marxism being taught in schools and set up this whole socialism thing, and and I feel like the conservatives, and this is where we're going to jump into this real quick before we end. I think conservatives are more populist. I think Trump was a populist. I don't think he was a fascist. I think that's a misinformation of what.
Well, to that point, fascism, the history of fascism is, if you look at Mussolini, you look at Hitler, and many of these banana republics, it always begins as a populist movement, invariably.
Yes, but I would say that Trump, because of America and our checks and systems and our balance, that Trump's really more of a populist than he was a fascist. I think people are misinformed that Trump's a fascist. If he was a fascist, what we saw at the Capitol would have been something that was going on for a long time. I think that there's some fascist idea at the end here, but I think most of his time has been a populist. And I think what we're looking at really is maybe a Marxism versus populist idea, that I think maybe the whole entire GOP is now populist, where it's kind of us, versus everybody else. The people now stand against the elite and those that are trying to take away things from us, and we're going to fight on the wings of freedom and what's right. And the liberals are going to try to take that away by political correctness and shutting down our freedoms and shutting down our freedom of speech and shutting down our rights to own, firearms and all this other stuff. It's been a thing that's been going on for quite some time, hasn't it?
I think so. Absolutely. For sure. I hesitate in calling Trump a fascist, because I don't think he knows what that means. I think Trump would have said whatever he had to say to whatever group he needs to say it to get the attention he needs. Well, I think that's. Well,
fascism requires a revolution.
I don't think he has an ideology.
Fascism. I think this.
I honestly believe if he could have done this in the Democratic Party, he would have done that. He would have done that as well.
I think you're probably right, but fascism is going to require a revolution. Okay, a really multi-headed revolution where the system's completely overtaken. And I don't.
It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. It did not happen that way in Germany.
It did happen that way in Germany. It absolutely happened that way in Germany. And the Nazi Party by force took parliament.
The Nazi Party was voted in.
Right. And then began to go into parliament and take seats from people forcefully by aggression.
No, they didn't.
That's a revolutionary movement. In Italy, it was a revolutionary movement.
In Italy, it was, but it was not in Germany. In Germany, it was a democratic process.
They voted them in, but parliament then was taken over by the Nazis by force. That is a revolution.
We're
Now they
talking
were
about
voted in by a democratic
You're talking about the
process.
Night
You're
of the
right.
Long Knives, but that was after Hitler had combined the two offices.
Right. But it's
through
still
a loophole in there. Think about how delicate this is. Through a loophole in their constitution. There was a loophole in their constitution that allowed him to combine the presidency and the prime ministership. I don't. This terminology may be wrong. For a period of time through the Reichstag, a Reichstag vote. He got that vote, and they never.
We'll agree to disagree, because in my opinion, if you go into parliament and forcibly, violently take seats to make parliament completely one party, that's a revolution.
It was never that in Germany. It was never one party. And Hitler never even got more than 50%.
That's right.
Hitler never even got more than 50% of the vote.
Right. Until they took parliament by force, violently.
They never
Then they had complete power.
They did not have every seat in the Reichstag, ever.
Okay. I think if you take parliament by force, violently.
When did they take it by force?
I can't give you the date, but I know that they went into parliament and they took it. Like, if you look at, we're getting off topic, but if you look at how Hitler got to the point, like, my question was always like, how did Hitler convince German people that the Jewish community was horrible? And if you look at it, it's because after World War I, when Germany was crippled, the Jewish communities came in and took over the businesses, and they charged German people a different cost than they charged Jewish people. Mortgages were loaned differently to Jewish people that lived in Germany versus German people. A loaf of bread for a Jewish person might be 5 cents. For a German person, it's 15 cents. So he was able to find, look, he didn't show up and just decide these people are the scapegoat for me. He had bullet points that made that. So once he gets into power, and once he's democratically elected into power, because he's able to use these people as scapegoats, and he wants to bring a military back to Germany, because after the treaty, they were told they can't have a military anymore. Well, he's like, that's bullshit. We need to be able to have our military. Once he got the side of the people, then he began to take power by force. And he took power by force through parliament, through a revolution.
It was never by force. It was by election, by a democratic process.
No, he got into power through an election, but his power rule came from taking parliament by force. But we'll agree to disagree on that. I mean, we'll have to look at the history. I could be wrong. We'll look at it, but I don't believe that.
My point being is that's how delicate democracy is.
It is delicate. You're absolutely right. And we're at a point now where I just think that we're throwing around things towards Trump that we need to kind of relax on. Like I said, I think the Republican Party's become more populist. From your original thing, to get back on topic, where they were saying it's Trump's party. I think maybe the identity of the party has changed, right? Where it's more of a populist idea, where a lot of people would argue with that the GOP has become fascist, and I don't believe that. So where do we go from here, right, Wick? I mean, where does the Republican Party go from here? And I don't know, that's a question I'd like to pose to you. If you are looking at this from a point of vantage, and you're saying that you can repair the Republican Party, to repair the two-party system, because I think we both agree Trump's done a lot of damage to the Republican Party, right?
Definitely done some damage to their brand, to their ideology. In fact,
it's made it a lot more extreme, right?
I think so.
More aggressive.
It's more aggressive. It's less to do with small government. It's less to do with fiscal responsibility.
But didn't it all? I mean, like, in your opinion?
For a good example of that is Trump increased the national debt more than Obama did.
Oh yeah, by far, by far. I mean, have we had a small government Republican president in a long time? I mean, don't you think? I guess the point is, don't you think that's kind of a falsehood?
Like just the idea of small government.
Well, just the idea that Republicans really believe that, when we're talking about conservatives in government that preach small government, I mean, they haven't really, 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 really put that into place, and they really haven't followed that philosophy.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's a difficult philosophy to even. I mean, an ideology, difficult ideology to even enact. I don't. I think.
Yeah, and I think
I
that's
mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna atrophy Social Security?
right. Well,
That's the
I've always
that's
been
the holy
told
grail.
I've always been told that if you want to solve the national debt, now this was way before it got out of control. But if you want to solve the national debt, what you had to do is you actually had to decrease spending, increase what you took in through higher taxes of the wealthy,
Hmm.
and one of the important things is you had to stop tax not really loopholes, but tax credits. So your mortgage on your home would no longer exist. You would actually pay your true taxes without any write offs. You couldn't use business write-offs. You couldn't use personal write-offs. You can't use your mortgage interest as a write-off. You'd have to close off all write-offs in taxes. Basically, everybody would owe taxes, and nobody getting checks back. That you have to do all those things.
Is it even possible at this point?
It's possible nobody's going to like you for doing it.
No, nobody's gonna.
If I
Everybody
come
likes
to
the
you and I
idea.
go, President Wick, we can solve this deficit, but this is what we got to do. We have to
Everybody has to pay more and they get nothing back.
Right. What we
Yeah.
have to do is we have to take in more. So you're going to have to tax wealthy, and you go, I know you, Wick, and I would be the same. You might go, okay, yeah, we can do that. Let's cut. See, really, truly, and we're getting a little off topic, but really, truly, you can't really tax the wealthy more on like their payroll, right, or their W-2. You're not going to be able to do it. But what I find really interesting is this is really the fault with Democrats, and it was really the fault with Obama, who said, you know what, I'm going to come in and I'm going to fix things. We're going to charge the wealthy more tax, and you know what, he didn't touch or barely touch capital gains tax. And what we do is we don't do anything about capital gains tax, which is where the wealthy make their money. The top 1% make their money off investments, and then they get their dividends and they get their money from their investments and they pocket it and they get charged 4% interest on that, or 4% tax. And really, we've got to raise that. The reason why government doesn't raise that is because that's how all of them are getting rich. All of those people that are in power are getting rich off of capital gains. They're making money off of their investments. They've all become very wealthy in the stock market. Shockingly, they shockingly come in making $140,000, and all of a sudden, a couple of years later, they're worth 12 million in their stock.
Yeah.
Very weird how that works out. I can't quite put my.
Can you imagine? I don't. Do you think it's just ironic that happens?
No. And in fact, listen, you make me president or king.
Mark Twain said, "Money makes hypocrites of us all."
You know what? You make me king of this country. And I'm telling you right now, anybody that runs for office has to freeze all their investment assets. Okay? You get a very good salary, but I'm not going to watch you invest money in stocks while you're meeting with lobbyists. I'm not going to sit there. You're going to freeze your investment accounts. Now, if you want to open them back up, leave office.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to sit there and watch you all of a sudden become $12 million wealthier because mysteriously became a very smart investor all of a sudden. There's something
that you weren't before.
And that's where listen, I'll give Bernie Sanders a lot of credit. I sat down and listened to him. There's a lot of things I don't like about his ideas. I don't like a lot of the progressive ideas of free. I don't think those things are possible. I think, listen, if you believe that, you're like a swampland in Florida you can buy. But I did like the fact that he said, listen, a lot of the things.
There's only one way to make that possible, with two ways. That's higher taxes and a massive reduction in spending in national defense.
Right. Now, I'm okay with both of those, but be sure you know what somebody means by I'm going to charge the wealthy more tax. You simply cannot charge the wealthy more tax because the wealthy is actually paying the majority of taxes in America as far as, payroll tax and what they get taken out of their check and what they're paying at the end of the year. Okay. What they're not paying is on capital gains tax, or capital gains tax is not hardly anything. So people that are making millions of dollars a year off of investments are getting a 6 or 7% tax on that. And Bernie Sanders said, look, this is what I'll do. I'm going to pay for my programs by increasing that to a 14% tax, or of subjecting that to the normal payroll tax of 25%. And that's where I'll get my money. I applaud you. Okay. I understand where you're getting the money from. I don't think it's going to be enough, but I applaud you for thinking outside the box. If you want to charge wealthy people more tax, you don't do it where they make their money. You make their income. You do it from the money that they make off their investments, because that's where the 1% is making their money. Okay. I know people that live on investments and they pay very little tax on those investments, and they write off losses, and they pay their, I think it's at a 7%. I may be wrong. Somebody's going to correct me on it, but it's a very low tax on capital gains. So you have to do it there. So if you're going to balance the budget, you have to do all those things. The main point being that if you come out and you say that, and average everyday person, you will no longer be getting a check on April 15th from us. You will now always owe to us. That's going to be a really hard sell. So solving the deficit is going to be a really tough thing to do going forward. We're going to have to accept that it's going to be what it's going to be. And I don't know that we can believe anybody that's going to come in and say they're going to resolve that, the national debt, But the main point of being able to repair the Republic.
I don't think you can solve the national debt.
Not now. You owe money to yourself. I don't know that I don't know. I'd be dumb to say that I know what it really trickles down to making a difference on things. Because nobody's gonna cash in on America's debt. I mean, you have loans everywhere. You pay your minimum payment, just like any other credit card.
Yeah.
But how do we repair the Republican Party after Trump? Well, my question would be: does it need to be repaired? As far as, is this where are we looking at the Trump ideology as being the future of the Republican Party?
Well, I don't think so, because it doesn't have an ideology. I think that's what they really, it's going to take strong leadership, and it's going to take strong messaging, and it's going to have to be a great walking back from cultural wedge issues and become a more economic message.
Okay, so let's look at it this way. So this is the end game, right? Now we're talking about the end game of everything. Conservatives have two choices here, in my opinion, right off the bat. Are we going to be Trump conservatives? Or are we going to reinvent ourselves into something different? Because I don't think you can go back to what you were before Trump.
I don't think they can right now. I don't think.
Well, you're going to have to make the decision, though. It's a rebranding. You're going to have to make a decision. Are we going to continue to go down the Trump palette? And that's going to be tough, Wick. 74 million votes. 74 million.
Which is very important to point out is not enough to win.
Not enough to win.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So how do you reconcile that?
74 million. Well, hold on. Let's pause right there, because this is what I want to do. We got 74 million. Popular vote 2016. Let's see. I hate when I have to stall here. I'm just looking to see. 62 million. So Trump got 62 million. Now he has 74 million in re-election. Hillary had 65 million. And let's see, Biden had 80 something million, right? Let's see here. My phone never works when I need it to. Yeah. Okay, so Biden had 81 million. All right, so we're talking about 20 million more in odd numbers. That's 40 million. That's 40 million combined. So the party is, as far as total. But if you're looking at 20 million or 10 million votes more, that's a lot from last time to this time. More than that, like 12, 13 million. If you do really good math. How do you turn around then and say, well, we don't need to do it this way anymore? It's not working. 74 million is a lot. And probably 74 million wins Mitt Romney the presidency. 74 million wins Jeb Bush the presidency. 74 million probably gets any moderate conservative a win. Probably by a good.
But are they going to accept a moderate conservative?
That's the problem.
Like, I know people, conservatives that viciously hate Mitt Romney for his
betrayal of Trump.
Yeah.
Which I don't blame.
There's this strange connection that I really struggle to understand. That it's almost messianic.
I don't know. I mean, who's in charge of the party right now? McConnell?
Trump right now is still the truth.
I mean, after.
It's still Trump until they have another nominee.
I mean, after the 20th, it'll be McConnell, right?
No, it will still be Trump will be head of the party until they nominate another presidential candidate.
I got what you're saying. Saying. Yep. Okay.
But not, I mean, in theory,
in theory, sure. Until they charge him after he
practically, it's the highest ranking would be McConnell.
Yeah.
As the Senate minority leader.
My suggestion to the Republican Party, as a moderate who kind of leans right, as a libertarian roots and all this other stuff, reinvent yourself. I don't see a problem with being a constitutional party. I don't have a problem with you saying, you know what, we rule by the Constitution, we honor the Constitution. That's how we'll make all decisions.
Is that going to be enough to compete though going forward? I don't know.
because you've got to realize too, out of 74 million, there is a passionate group of people who want extreme right. Because they want extreme right because they want to combat extreme left. And we can't dismiss that. Because all things indicate that there's a good possibility that Bernie Sanders, AOC, and that group have plans for Bernie Sanders to push an agenda to be more democratic socialist. The democratic socialist, not socialist. I know there's a difference. And will Biden do that? Or will Biden stick to the moderate plan? Because Joe Biden's the same guy, to his credit, that stood up in debate and said, hey, look, all the freebies they're promising you, I've been there. It can't work.
Yeah.
So does he now give in? And I would say Harris is a moderate. I mean, somebody who comes from the judicial system and the legal system. Are we fair to say
that's
Harris
what I've been trying to tell
moderate?
a lot of people. A lot of people lump her into the Bernie Sanders AOC camp.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that she is.
That's inaccurate.
Okay. Are they gonna toe the moderate line, which I think is brilliant. You want to know what I think politics needs to go back to? It needs to go back to being moderate. The Bill Clintons, the Bushes, the Obamas, you need to go back to moderate. Moderate is okay. The problem is that I know a lot of Trump supporters who think that we have to beat the doors down to get heard, and that we don't get pushed around. We're going to have to be aggressive. We're going to have to be strong. We're going to have a strong backbone. I think this is a dangerous path to take, right? I mean,
I think it's set a dangerous precedent, and I think what I think is going to happen is they're going to become a little enclave into themselves.
Aren't great politicians great compromisers?
I think so. Yeah, that's the brilliance of our nation.
But that's where we've gotten off. I feel like both sides have gotten off of that train.
I think so. Absolutely. I have ideas of why that happened, but I think we're going to have to find some common ground.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to sacrifice and learn. I think going to your point about like almost moral bankruptcy and how that relates to compromise is as Americans, we don't, in our everyday lives, we sacrifice nothing anymore. I mean, we get what, our immediate impulses are met. Our impulses are met immediately
They are.
within every facet of our lives. And I think that's an extension into politics.
Yeah, and we're also an instant gratification. We're becoming more and more of an instant
Yeah.
gratification society where we want something to happen immediately. And with Trump, here's another thing where he's one half of a really good president, in my opinion, is that say what you want, but he got what he when he wanted to get something done, he at least made a huge effort to get it done. I mean, there was a lot of things where he backed up what he said on what he was going to try to do. Now, was he successful? Not always, but there were a lot of accounts where many times when I ask a conservative, what do you like about Trump so much? I get the answer that two answers. One, he's not a politician. And two, when he says what he said, he does what he says he's going to do as far as his political promises. And we hear a lot of chatter, and we hear a lot of backhanded promises. We hear a lot of what somebody's going to do something, and very rarely do they do it. You know, they're just telling you what you want to hear. Trump was going to build that damn wall. It's not going to get finished, but he's going to build the wall.
Oh, well, he also had to because his whole political career was based on it.
Right. But what he didn't do is go in there and say, hey, guys, look, you know, I want to build that wall, but let's talk about this a minute. You know, no, I mean, he built like a couple of miles of that thing. And you give him another reelection. We have a wall by the time he gets out next election time.
Which is it's unusual too, though.
Even when people are saying you're not going to build it.
I looked into that, and yeah, he only built a couple of extra miles of wall. There was a lot of wall already there. That's something that a lot of people don't really
I think
understand.
They need to restructure it or redesign.
Yeah, they reinforced a lot of it, but I think they only built a few extra miles.
So, you know, that's another half of him that is credit where credit's due. I mean, at least he's a politician. Now, when we say that Trump changed politics forever, and we're standing right here in 2021 with 9 days to go, and we're looking at the Republican Party, what do you think that really means going forward?
That they've changed politics.
Do you think? And let me give you.
Well, he's made it more of a reality show atmosphere to it.
Well,
and
let me.
I think hopefully that changes very quickly.
Let me shake some eggs for a second and just see. Do you think that they mean that they're done electing politicians to that position? Do you think they're done with compromise of that position? Do you think that conservative, or do you think that we're going to see a lot more elections with people that are financially secure? They're going to be more elections that are based on economics more than social belief. You know, are we going to vote more on, hey, you know what, I'm economically conservative and socially liberal? You know, what do we say when we say that we're going to?
I think that has to change
forever,
because that's the way the culture is going. Mm-hmm. I mean, most young conservatives I know have no problem with most of the cultural issues. You know,
I don't think so.
Some do, but
baby boomers struggle.
Really struggle with like.
Yeah, they make a big portion.
And then there's that whole dimension of, you know, the next election is going to be even harder for them.
You know what? Again, as we talk about repairing the Republican Party, and the only reason we're doing this is because it needs to be addressed. There's damage here, whether you think so or not. On a large scale, there's damage here in the Republican Party now. You know, I think you got to get younger.
You have to get younger. You need to get more. You have to get diversified.
Yes,
for sure.
You know what? The party, and I'm saying this as a person of faith, you've got to quit allowing the far Christian right to control your politics. Okay? you have to move on from baby boomers in the party.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, there are intelligent guys, and you probably would not agree. I think you'd agree they're intelligent. Your Tucker Carlsons, your Ben Steins, or Ben, what's his name? Ben Shapiro, right? Is that it?
Ben Shapiro, yeah.
Yeah. Your Candace Owens. Now, yeah, they cause problems and they can be loud. These are very smart young people.
I think,
And I think if you say, we need you guys to come in and figure our party out, because I think
it's not going to be Tucker Carlson, and it's probably not going to be Ben Shapiro.
But if you
because
listen
they've got Trump written in bold lettering.
I don't know, like
neon lettering on their foreheads.
Ben Shapiro was interviewed by Joe Rogan. I think that's a misconception.
Maybe not Shapiro.
Shapiro
Carlson,
was interviewed by Joe Rogan.
Tucker Carlson, absolutely.
And this was a little while ago, but it was during Trump's presidency. And Shapiro said, I've got a ton of issues with Trump. So I don't know, but I think that you have to get younger. Listen, you're not going to agree with what majority of the core feeling of probably what the conservatives are going to be going forward. Let's establish that. But for young conservatives, they need to feel like that they are a part of the party. And I think that you do that by being a little bit more conservative financially and understanding that you got to be a little bit more liberal socially.
Yeah.
You know, you can't fight on, listen, abortion is an issue that I'm really weird about because, you know, how can I fight on it? I mean, I've got my opinions, but whatever I say, somebody's not going to agree with. It's a never ending fight. Okay. But there's other issues. Gay marriage. I can imagine, I can be honest with you. So I have conservative roots and connections. Gay marriage, nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Abortion is still a very hot topic issue with conservatives. It's a very hot topic. Welfare. I don't know. I got to think that now with unemployment being what it is and the stimulus checks, that a lot of conservatives will view welfare systems a lot differently than they did before. I know people who have survived on unemployment, been able to get back on their feet with unemployment, that were conservatives. God bless them. I mean, if it wasn't there, a lot of them would have been in a really deep, bad situation.
And we were there in 1929 without it.
Yeah. So I think that there are, I mean, we look at the issues. I think national defense, if I sit there and I tell you, hey, look, our biggest budget's national defense, I don't know what the number is, 7 times higher than any other country. Let's trim that and let's get it to education maybe. I think you can get conservatives on board with that.
It's very interesting. The presidency is, I heard it explained this way once, that great presidents, the presidency is like a leather glove. And great presidents reach into that leather glove and they make the glove larger. And over time, the Lincolns, both the Roosevelts, Reagan, made that glove larger. Now, I think my question being now, has Trump made that glove larger, or is he going to make it, or is it now going to shrink?
I just want to make a point on defense for conservatives. We spend $732 billion on defense. All other countries combined, that includes Russia and China, $726 billion. Okay.
Our entire economic system is based on the military-industrial complex.
It is. Conservatives need to wake up to that. They need to realize.
Yeah.
If you think that Russia's outspending you by 800 billion, well, if we're spending 730 billion, I can guarantee you Putin's spending 850 billion. No, he's not.
He's not.
He's absolutely not.
No, you know where he's putting all his resources in? Hackers.
Yeah. Yeah, he's ruining elections through Facebook.
And I mean, and that whole and what's getting completely overshadowed in the recent events in the last few weeks is that massive hack where they got into the DOJ, the DOD, and almost every major corporation in America. And it is entirely Russia. And that is the future.
Russia has figured out cyber warfare.
I am telling you.
And if you
I will stake my life and reputation on, and that man is coming.
So
he is coming.
And people that just to stay on the defense spending.
Yeah.
China spends the most out of any of those other countries. $300 billion. We spend $732 billion. And China spends $300 billion. We're more than double what China spends alone. Conservatives have to break down the walls of what they believe. And listen, I know everybody's going to say this was a liberal podcast. It's not, I can assure you. But there has to be some rationalization where the conservatives and the Republican Party wakes up. Take care of your own house. I know. Here's the problem that I have with what's going on. Right now, what will happen is Republicans will point at Democrats and say, these are all the things that you've done. I don't want to hear it. I want to know how you're going to clean up your own house. And what I mean is, what about the social issues? Where are we going to stand? Are you going to finally come into 2020 and realize some of these social issues we're fighting about? If somebody's doing something in their own right that's not harming anyone else, who cares? That's what you need to think about. Okay? Now, abortion, you can fight on that. It's harming another person. I get it. You feel like that's whose rights are more important, the babies or the mothers? I get it. We can fight that. You can fight that fight with somebody else. I ain't going to do it. That's a fight I understand. And you can stick to your guns on that. I'm not telling you to back off of it. But when you're looking at military spending being $732 billion, and you're sitting there complaining about how we can't afford a free healthcare system, and we can't afford free education, which I'm against, free education. You know what? I'm gonna stand on it right now, maybe because I'm getting sleepy now, Wick. If you're gonna sit there and tell me you're gonna spend money on free college education, do me a solid and fucking put the money in for K through 12.
I agree with that, but
don't give me that I'm going to pay for college for people to go and decide they don't want to do it anymore and quit. Give me K through 12, where education is the envy of the world.
I agree with that.
From Detroit to Tampa Bay to Washington, D.C. to New York to San Francisco.
But they do have to do something about skyrocketing tuition. That's out of control.
It's out of control if you want to go to a major university. You can go to a local university. I went to a local university. It ain't that expensive. The problem is that everybody thinks that their best education comes from LSU in Georgia. And that's a falsehood.
LSU?
Well, is that a state school?
Yeah, right. It is. But
Georgia, you know what I mean.
Are chomping at the bit to go to LSU.
Cornell, you may have heard of it.
Yeah. But it has risen like 1,200% in the last 20 years.
You can get a great education at a small school. And we have,
you know what?
But this is where we are, Wick, with bigger's better. And what people think of you means something. So I've got to go to Cornell, and I've got to go to Georgia, and I've got to go to all these schools, and I got to go to Alabama, and I got to pay, $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year to be there. And guess what? You can pay a fraction of that at a local school. That's on you. Okay. But and if there's any left over, if I refuse, this is my thing on the education stance on it. I refuse to be all free college education and see kids go to school in Detroit where they have fungus in the ceilings, where there's a school in Detroit that has no roof on their gym. And these kids are expected to go, and that's a safe place for them to stay out of the game.
If you want to change this country,
kidding me.
Education.
If you want to do it, you give me K through 12 first and foremost. If
Start
you
paying
have
teachers
money left
more.
over, I want everybody to have the same education. I don't care if you're black, white, Mexican. I don't care. I don't care where you live. Your school should be top notch. When you go to school and you're in an inner city area, it should be a place you want to go. It should be a place that you want to be, and it should be the best education.
I have a sneaking suspicion.
But hold on, let me just finish before you go. But you're not going to do that by spending $732 billion on defense,
national defense.
Yeah, that's my point. You got the money. You've got the money.
And
Go
people,
spend it on K through 12.
and then, in the same vein, they're bitching about welfare, which is what, 1.2% of your tax dollar.
Listen, I think we give 1% of
Yeah.
of our actual income to foreign countries. It's not that much money. If you take all that money back, you're not doing anything for yourself. It's 1%.
Yeah.
It's a few $billions. Okay. We give all this money to everybody else. It's not that much money. I mean, in the scheme of things. But what you don't look at, conservatives, is the $732 billion spent on defense. Trust me. And I know my military friends will get mad at me. Maybe some of them will like it, but I'm telling you the truth. You spend more
And not
than
to mention
every other country combined.
that's to build a standing army
Yeah.
that to fight wars that will no longer exist.
Yeah. When we're talking about drones doing the fighting now, listen, there are people that make a great career in the military. I love you. I thank you for that. I really do.
If China and Russia come, they are not going to come with boots on the ground.
They're not. Listen, this isn't Red Dawn. Okay.
No.
But
they're going to come in and they're going to shut down electrical grids.
But see, that's the
they're going to shut down.
I'm saying is compromise. So if I'm sitting here,
waterworks.
This is where the conservatives have to go. When you're sitting there and you're preaching me democratic socialism, you're saying we're going to give free schools. I'm going to say, what free schools are you giving? And when you say college, I'm going to say, well, let's stop right there. If you got the money to give away free college, I want K through 12. I want K through 12 schools in every part of this nation to be the best. I want to catch them when they're young. I want to get these kids out of gangs. I want these kids that are in abusive homes to find a place to go where they feel comfortable, that they're learning and they're getting the best education possible. And you know what? Let's give teachers a raises. Okay. Let's give them a livable wage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let's stop thanking all the people that we admire professionally and pay them.
Let's fire teachers who suck. Why? Because it pays $60,000 a year and I can find a good one. I've got them lined up outside. But if you're going to suck for 40 grand a year, you're going to suck because they need you. But I guarantee it's just like we talked about with police. Police start getting paid 60 grand and you start asking people for a degree, 2-year degree to be a police officer. And I'm going to pay you 60 grand a year. I'm going to give you a really great pension. I damn well guarantee you can get rid of the problem kids. You can get rid of the problem people. You can get rid of problem teachers. When you pay better, you have a lot more options to hire better educated, better people to come in with a good resume and say, you know what, this is a job you'll be proud to have. Not that you're not, but it'll pay you as if you're proud to have it. You will be able to live on it. It will pay you 60, 55, 60 grand a year. Do a lot for teachers and
incentivize them.
So that's compromise, right? That's where I'm trying to tell conservatives. This is where you have to think differently. If we're going to get free education, we're going to get free healthcare. Okay, so let's do this. If I'm going to do free education, that's fine. Give me K through 12 first. Here's all the reasons why. If you want to argue with me, liberal, go ahead, because I'm telling you, these inner city kids, they need a better school. I'm tired of, I don't want to hear about these kids going to school and having fungus growing in their classrooms. You should be
and then going home to a war zone.
Yeah, and then going home to a war zone. But not only that, you're going to tell them that college is free, but their K through 12 doesn't matter. Bullshit. So that's compromise. So the problem that we have, and I'm gonna go on conservative rant because you're the guys that need to be rebuilding your brand. It's not all or nothing. It's not all or nothing. Not everything's all or nothing. Healthcare is not all or nothing. There's a compromise there. I don't have a problem with them saying, listen, we're going to do a hybrid system. There's a hybrid system in Australia that I think people should look at. It's a really good system. And it's the government. You pay some of your taxes for government healthcare. Okay. But if you want private healthcare, you have the right to purchase that. So you want to skip through waiting list. You want to skip through times to see your doctor. Go buy a private policy, which is actually really affordable because so many people are on the government form that if you have the money, you can go buy a private care.
You can't tell me all of these industrialized nations can do it and we can't.
I think like Canada's not some of these formulas that people throw, they don't work. I mean, Canada, what they do in Canada, you can have cancer in a very low populated part of Canada, and you'll pay $40,000 for that cancer treatment. But if you live in a well-populated part of Canada, it's zero.
Right.
That system won't work here. But there's a hybrid system where you can say, look, like to me at this point, this is another failure of Trump. like it's another failure of the GOP, only because I'll say that because Obama's attached to Obamacare right now. His name's on it because it's not really the name of it, but everybody calls it Obamacare.
Right.
Okay, we have it in place. Fix it. Sit down and say, I don't care whose name's on it, but we got to get this thing worked out. How do we?
Don't make it a vanity project.
Well, it's got a Democrat's name on it, so I ain't touching it. And you conservatives will sit there and go, "Don't you touch that Obamacare, make it better. Don't you do it. Let that thing rot on its own." Well, this is where. What are you going to do? You wasted millions, billions of dollars on a system that you have in place. Fix it. Say, okay, fine. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have a hybrid system. We're going to have government care for all major medical.
Right.
Okay. Or you don't like that? We're going to do government health. Well, we're going to do government health care on all major medical needs. Okay. You're going to have to pay a little tax for that. But what you're going to be able to buy for about $150, about $100 a month for your family is prescription coverage, private prescription coverage, private doctor care, preventative medicine. My stomach hurts. I need to go see a doctor. All that will be privatized. And it'll cost you $150 a month for your whole family. There's ways to work this out, but what conservatives, the problem with the Trump conservatives now is it's all or nothing. Don't give in.
It starts and ends.
Don't back down. Don't back down. And there's another thing that threw me off of Trump as we wrap up here is the fact when he's asked about what's planned for healthcare and the debate. He's like, he had nothing.
He had no plan at all.
We're working on getting prescriptions from Canada. Really? How long have you been working on that? Because it's been a long time. I know a lot of people that can't afford. I know a person that has a Down syndrome child that needs a certain medication or she'll die. Guess what? It went up to $400 a month. No, $400 a week.
Jesus.
Okay. So what? I've had this opportunity for 3 years. Where is it? So you have to understand, conservatives are going to have to understand there's going to have to be a compromise. And if me and you are sitting in our seats and we're making laws and we're changing lives, and I'm looking at you and I go, Wick, I know you want free health care, man. Here's the logistics of how that's going to happen. I don't know that we can do that. But what about we both break? What if we meet in the middle? What if we continue a plan for major medical that's on a healthcare basis that the government pays for it, but to keep the cost down on that, why don't we privatize prescriptions? You can get a plan that's for visiting your doctor, your local doctor, taking care of all minor ailments. Anything under $25,000 is handled by that. Can we do that? And you might go, fuck no, I can't do that. And then you go back and you sleep on it. You go, I think
I can do that.
But what has happened is the danger of Trump conservatism is this idea that they're not right. I don't care what their idea is. They're not.
Well, we go back.
Give in.
I don't know if it's entirely Trump because McConnell, stood on the Capitol steps and said that when Obama was elected, he was going to employ a policy of blanket obstructionism.
Yeah.
And apparently he's saying that now to private donors again, even with the caveat, I will strike it down even if it's a good bill. But he doesn't control the Senate anymore.
So here's the other thing. Cut the heads off. And I hate to say it because I do love a lot of baby boomers. I really do. I mean, those are my parents. But cut the heads off of some of these baby boomers that are in office.
These sacred cows have to go.
The sacred cows have to go. Get rid of the McConnells. Get rid of all of the old army. If the Democrats want to keep Pelosi and wheel her out at 98 years old, let them do it. But you worry about getting youth into your party, getting youth into positions of power, people who understand what they have to do going forward. And
they're going to have to do it to even be competitive.
And go moderate. And I think if you do that, you can win back elections. I think you can win back presidencies. But you're not going to do, if you do this Trumpism and you're going to, conservatives, if you're going to do this, you're making a huge mistake because government works on compromise. And the whole idea of Trump was don't bend, don't break, don't let them have their way, Trump. You stand up to them now. And if that's your ideology, you're not in for making things better.
No, you're in for winning an argument.
You're in for winning an argument. You care about the R and the D. But you have to say, we're going to be a party that's going to rebrand ourselves. We're going to get youth. We're not going to start listening to the religious folks. We're not going to stop listening to the older folks, but we are going to get younger people in here who maybe don't have the strict social views that the older generations have.
Yeah.
And I think you do that. I think that if you become a more compromising party, I think if you become a more moderate party, let them move left all they want to. I guarantee you, Wick, the party that comes to the middle will be the party that wins every time. The Democrats did that this time. They had an option. Liberals had an option to go extreme.
And Bernie Sanders.
And they didn't do it twice.
And I think conservatives have failed to realize that Biden is the moderate choice.
Biden is the moderate choice. He absolutely is. I have no fear. Listen, I have no fear of Biden. I have no fear of Hillary Clinton. I do fear a little bit of Bernie Sanders' ideas because, again, I've told you why. I think they're just compromised, and I think it's as extreme as the right saying it's all this or nothing. I don't think it can be all this and nothing with democratic socialism. So the party has already said they don't want it. The Democrats have won on moderation. They have won on moderation. But if the conservatives continue to stick to the Trump extremism, they're going to make a mistake, Wick. This is not the way to go. I know there's 74 million votes there. I get it. But I have a feeling those 74 million votes will still be there. Likability is the key to an election. All right? It's weird that Trump was more likable than Hillary, but it ended up being true in 2016. Biden was more likable than Trump in 2020. And whoever wins 2024 will probably be, will be either Biden will be let's see. I don't even know if Biden will be alive.
I know, right? That's a major concern.
Harris may have a likability problem. We'll see. I didn't like her in her debate. I didn't like her with Pence. It's so hard. I mean, to me, it's so hard to be rough with Pence. He just seems like such a nice guy.
I know.
He was just such a bitch. It was like, I get it. She didn't win me over. I didn't find a likability factor. I really wanted to see her come in and be an adult. And a lot of, I'm speaking. It just reminded me of somebody who's really bitchy. And I'm like, you know what? I just don't want to deal with that. I think I've seen enough of that on Facebook. I don't want to deal with it in politics anymore. So I really wish she would have been different. And maybe she will be after 4 years. Maybe there's a lot of things that you learn. And I hope so. But I think that Biden was more likable in this election, Wick. And I think that had a lot to do with it too. And we can say likability as far as Trump just was a blunderbuss of disaster this last year. And I thought Trump might come out and be a little bit more likable because he had the knowledge of the presidency the last 3 years, but I don't know they learned anything from his last debate.
No, I mean, that first debate was
embarrassing.
Oh, yeah.
It's embarrassing. Democrats, your party's told you they don't want to do the democratic socialism thing. They're not really all that interested. They like moderation. Republicans, moderates won. Find yourself in the moderate position, and you'll win more people. You'll win the undecided. I had this big argument before we get out of here at Thanksgiving with my family. I mean, an all out. I thought this was it. I thought I'm disowned. Because I said, you don't understand how much independents make a decision in these votes. Your right and your left are going to be there regardless. They're going to be there. Okay? You're not going to change any of that. Nobody's going to go from right to left on a major level. Your independents in the middle are your moderates who might be conservative liberals or liberal conservatives, the Zell Millers of the parties, right? The people who
Blue Dog Democrats.
They kind of see things and they kind of judge it on what they're feeling at the moment. That's who wins elections. And both of these, I think the Biden campaign won those guys and girls, and the Trump people abandoned them. So conservatives, remember that the independents make a big part of this vote every single election. Win them over by being moderate. Win them over for being in the middle. It's not a bad thing, but if you continue this Trump extremism, you're going to be on a drought. You're going to look like the Falcons in 2020.
Yeah, you're gonna, and I don't think it's going to happen very quickly, but they're going to have to get it together before 2000 and before the midterms.
It depends. Before we get out of here, like I said, I think some of these GOP people are like, "Ooh, man, glad that's over with."
Oh God! But now they're they have that brand on them, and what do they do?
And now you got to fight it back off.
I mean, maybe they can.
I don't think. Listen, I don't think guys like Ted Cruz, deep down, if you had a conversation with them, would be extreme right. You'd probably find some moderate ground. I think Lindsey Graham probably has some moderate ground. They have to play roles.
Yeah.
But I think when your leader is making you be extreme, you have to be extreme or else he's going to make your life a living hell.
Well, the problem is, too, they're career politicians, and they're going to do what their constituency demands to get reelected.
Right.
And Lindsey Graham learned that very, very hard lesson.
Both of those parties, both of those states, still close races, and were very close races in both of those states too. I mean, it wasn't a slam dunk for the Republicans in those states.
Yeah, it's getting closer and closer, even in the red states.
Listen to what America's telling you. They want moderates. That's my lesson for the GOP. Wick, I had a lot of fun, man.
That was fun, yeah.
Not that this is fun talking about the
no,
but I want to one thing I want to wrap up before we leave. I always do this. I have to cut this out in editing. But one thing I want to say is I do want to express that everything's going to be okay. I know this feels like the most extreme moment in your life, but America has seen the Civil War. It's seen Pearl Harbor. It's seen September 11th. It's seen some really hard times. There was a point where we were putting Japanese people in concentration camps.
Yeah, we've been through we've been through worse.
We have been through a lot.
I think we reacted differently in this last year than we have in the past.
Listen, it was frustrating. This pandemic, that's why I say this pandemic was a big ingredient to the disaster. I do believe that. And I think if we didn't have that, it probably wouldn't have been as bad as it was.
Well, and I'll be blunt too. We've had it easy for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah, we went through some hardship in 2020. And maybe deservedly so. Maybe the economy needed to be reset. Maybe jobs needed to be reset. Maybe all this stuff needed to happen. I mean, not the deaths, of course, but there's a lot of things that we have to look at as the positives that come out as the vaccine begins to spread. Hopefully, it's hope throughout the country, throughout the world. But I want to express there's a lot of people that feel really dark right now, especially young people. And I want you to know that this country's seen this and worse. And we really do rise above. We really do meet the call at some point. This is not the end of America. It's not the end of democracy. It's not the end of our republic. It's just something that we go through every couple of years. We go through something like this. That's really tough on everybody, and it's really confusing and scary and frustrating.
Well, I'd also like to. I think it's time we especially Generation Xers and perhaps even millennials need to brace ourselves that our lives are going to be more difficult.
Yeah.
Than our parents' lives were economically. Yeah. I have a very, very bad feeling about what's brewing in the East. But we're going to be fine no matter what comes.
Thank you. Yeah. I told the story earlier, a friend who had cancer. Everybody's given their advice and prayers, and I think that's fine. Mm-hmm. But America kind of has cancer right now. We're going to have to go through some radiation. We're going to have to shrink it. I'm hoping that a lot of it will end soon. We'll get some radiation soon. We'll shrink it a little bit soon. But I want everybody to know, just like I told that friend, you're going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. No matter what happens, it'll be okay.
And this division and this infighting is exactly Putin's plan.
Yeah. It's the cancer.
Yeah. This is what he has sown into American society.
But
you mentioned The Art of War earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And one of Sun Tzu's one of his declarations was, you sow division within your enemy.
Yeah. Yep.
And you split him apart.
And also, it was Saddam Hussein who said their freedoms will be their downfall. And that's what we're starting to see with the rioting and gathering and public.
We cannot make him right.
We can't make him right. You know what? I've heard it before. I'll end it with this. Everybody knows their rights, but nobody knows their responsibilities. Know your responsibility with your rights. Doesn't mean that you get to push people around and force them into anything. It means that you have a right, and that right requires responsibility and understanding and some empathy. So before you blow smoke at the person who's not smoking in the parking lot because you have a right to smoke, just be kind. Know your responsibility is maybe to not smoke in that place. And
thou shalt not be a dick.
Yeah, don't be a dick. Wick, that was fun. I want everybody to join us next week when we talk about whatever's on our minds. But this is a long show. We knew it would be a little long. Sorry if you sat through it. Hopefully you did. Hopefully you paused it, came back to it, paused it, came back to it, because I know it's rather long. Editing is going to be a blast. But I don't think I have to edit much. I think everything in here is solid, and hopefully everybody enjoyed it. Next week we'll hopefully take on a little bit more fun topic. We'll see what the book brings us, but hopefully we'll have a little bit more fun next week. Wick, thank you so much, man, for sitting through this with me and doing this with me. It's always fun.
God bless America.
God bless America. We're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And, don't worry, folks. We'll come through this. Join us next week. Wick, is there anything you want to say to the people?
I think we've expressed it all. We're going to be fine.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Just calm down.
Calm the fuck down. It's like the Office scene with the fire. It's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening.
Is that the one where Michael was the first to run out?
Yeah.
It was like,
oh God, it's happening. It's happening. All the doors are locked. All right. We're going to be fine, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. You're listening to the Dukes of Blather.